And the Blue Jackets win this one 4-2 over Nashville with the empty netter.
There you go. Last night, win after Dallas had lost to Tampa Bay. Win and you were in, and the Nashville Predators could not win, and thus they are not in. We are live out at the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation out here in, I don't even know what part of town this is, but and I turned to Caroline Fenton as if she would know what part of town this is. I've lived here for 24, 25 years. Caroline Fenton's lived here for 3 weeks.
I still use maps to get pretty much everywhere, but we're getting better.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't turn to you and ask. I think this is Arrington. I think that's the part of town this is in. But beautiful golf course, beautiful day so far.
The view is beautiful out here.
View's awesome, so there's that. Last night's game, let's start on that. And let's open up the phones today, get your thoughts on last night's game. 615-737-1025. I'm going to say this. I think sometimes people who listen to this show, there are two sets of people, I believe, who listen to this show. One is the set of people that appreciate a Nashville radio show that will tell it how it is all the time, no matter what, no matter how uncomfortable it may make you feel that, hey, we tell the truth. Everybody knows I like the Titans, I like the Predators, I root for them to win, but, let's keep it real. The other set is the people that hate me. And I hate saying this, but there are a lot of people who do watch or listen to this show because they don't like me, and I get that. But they take things I say, or they take these little slogans and they beat them in on Twitter, and when they see me and all this kind of, and the one thing when it surrounds the Predators is big boy forward. And I have yelled and screamed for months and for years about the need for a big boy forward. It's pretty remarkable in 22 years of being a franchise that this team has never had a true big boy forward, a top of the league, give the guy the puck, come through at the end of the game for you, big boy forward. They've never had one. And I know some people will throw out Paul Kariya in 2004. You know what? I never felt like Paul Kariya at that point in his career still was the big boy forward. But maybe you can say that for a year and then they had to tear it down. But that might be it. Other than that, they've never had a big boy forward. Philip Forsberg's not a big boy forward. Ryan Johansson's not a big boy forward. They paid Matt Duchene all this money. He's not a big boy forward. He can't even get on the ice last night at the end of the game. David Legwand was never a big boy forward. All these guys over the years that they've put up on first lines, they're not big boy forwards. And the reason I say it, I don't just say it to say it. Now, when I use the term big boy forward and why I think it's so desperate they need one, I oftentimes refer to the playoffs and playoff series that you have lost because other teams had the big boy forward. Whether it was Chicago in 2015 and they had the big boy forward in Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, whether it was Pittsburgh in 2017, Malkin and Crosby, big boy forwards. 2018, Blake Wheeler, Patrick Laine at that point, big boy forwards for Winnipeg. 2019, Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, big boy forward. Those are big boy forwards. And the Predators have never had one, and they currently don't have one. And last night's game, I thought was a game where they desperately needed a big boy forward to make a big boy forward play. I'm not mad at the team. I'm not mad at the coach. I'm not mad at the players. I'm not mad at the goalie. I'm not mad. If I was going to get mad at anybody, it'd be Ryan Ellis because I thought he just let Columbus just skate around in the Nashville zone and did nothing, which we have seen too many times from a guy making that kind of money, and how much everybody just lauds praise onto Ryan Ellis all the time. So if I was going to get mad at anybody, it'd be him, but I'm not. But it's big boy forward. And it's always going to be a problem. It probably isn't going to keep you out of the playoffs. The Predators are probably going to make the playoffs. Look, let's, again, keep it real on this show. They're probably going to make the playoffs. I'm not sure they're good enough to beat Carolina, but I don't think Dallas is going to win every game the rest of the way. I think the Predators are going to get in. But when you play Carolina in the playoffs, they've got Sebastian Aho. He's a big boy forward. When you play Tampa Bay, if you are lucky enough to play Tampa, they've got Steven Stamkos, a big boy forward, Nikita Kucherov, returning from injury, big boy forward, and Braden Point, a big boy forward who has really come along the last couple of years. They are loaded, and Florida's got 2-2. I mean, at the end of the day, again, there's nothing that this team can do today to fix the big boy forward problem. And I know that John Hines wants a big boy forward. And I know, to his credit, David Poyle has tried for years and years and years to land the big boy forward. But they still just don't have it. And it's hard for me to look at this team and think that they're really going to be able to take the step as a franchise, not just this year, but over the next couple of years, until they find it. You've got to figure out a way, whether it's drafting one, maybe it's Tomasino, maybe it becomes Tolvanen. I don't know. But they've got to get the big boy forward, because last night I watched on the ice a lot of guys busting their rear ends to try and tie that game at the end. I mean, the energy level I thought was fantastic last night, especially once they got down a goal. I thought the energy level was fantastic. I mean, I'm watching Tanner Jeannot knock people off the puck, and I'm saying, why was Austin Watson on this team for all these years? This guy's better than Austin Watson is at all of that. I mean, I'm looking at this team, and I see the effort. I see the cohesiveness. I see, like, they're playing, even guys that we've got on for their lack of effort over the years. Johansson and Duchesne, although Duchesne, I never really thought it was a lack of effort. But I think he's playing better than he's played in a while, although maybe John Hines disagrees. But, like, the effort level was there. The commitment was there. The grit was there. They just don't have a big boy forward who, in that kind of moment last night, you can throw on the ice and you can say, go get us a goal. Because Chicago can do it with Patrick Kane. Dallas can do it with Jamie Benn. Florida can do it with Barkov. Tampa can do it with whoever they want to. I mean, it's like, hey, pick a card, whichever one you want. And we know Carolina can do it. The teams that you play right now, they can do it. I mean, again, nothing long-term. If we're talking big picture for the Predators, more so than just making the playoffs, nothing changes long-term until they get the big boy forward. And I know that I hammer this into the ground, and I know that a lot of people, last night, they could have won last night without a big boy forward. They can beat Carolina in a game without a big boy forward and make it to the playoffs. But big picture for what this franchise needs to do what we think they're capable of, or what we expect them to be capable of, they're not going to do it until they get the big boy forward. And I thought last night was a perfect example of that. They played hard. They played together. The goalie, I mean, I'll say this, Merzlikins played a nice game last night. He didn't stand on his head, though. He didn't steal the game last night. You just could not put the puck in the net. And if we're going to sit here and hold hands and rely on Mikhail Granlund and Calle Yarncroke and Matt Duchesne and Tanner Jeannot and all of those guys, the kind of the role player type guys, if we're going to wait for all those guys to be able to beat a Tampa Bay or to beat a Carolina, I just don't think it's going to happen. So I thought last night's game, I watched it. I thought the effort was there. They wanted it. They just couldn't do it. And I think that's where, I take a giant highlighter and I just highlight the lack of that impact high-end forward. And I think last night was an example of that. What did you think, Caroline Fenton?
I agree with you that they did want it, but it was just from the very beginning, it just felt like very underwhelming, lazy hockey. I mean, and what was going on with Matt Duchesne last night?
Yep.
I mean, John Hines made it very, very clear that was not an injury benching. That was a benching because he just flat out was not performing. And if this team wants to make a serious run in the playoffs, you can't have a player like Matt Duchesne getting benched because he's just not doing anything out on the ice.
So I think that's a bigger issue. And I think that's one that I think John Hines is ultimately going to regret, the way that he handled that last night. And I'll explain that later. But again, I mean, I disagree on the lazy hockey aspect of it. I mean, I thought they played with effort last night. I mean, I feel like we can look at the Predators when they play like dogs and we can point the finger and say they played like dogs. And I don't feel like they played like that last night. I mean, I thought they played hard last night. Now, that, the game-winning goal, woof. I mean, just the lack of, and this is what always gets me going on Ryan Ellis, and I haven't promised anybody today that I wouldn't get going on Ryan Ellis, so I guess I could get going on Ryan Ellis, but I'm not going to go crazy. But, I mean, if you're so good, if you're as good as everybody always tells me you are, and by the way, he's not, but if you're that good, you got to go get the puck. He just stood there. He just waited for somebody else to go get the puck. It's like, I'm just going to stay here. You guys go over there. And I'm watching it, and I'm watching, Columbus just circle the zone, and Ryan Ellis is just standing there. And I, if I had to point a finger, or if I had to get mad to your point about that lazy hockey idea you brought up, that's where I would probably point the finger. That's where I feel like I would be bothered the most in last night's game. But I will say that I think I disagree with you on the laziness front. I thought the effort level was there.
And when I say lazy, I don't mean like they didn't want it, not that they didn't fight for it. They wanted that win last night. It just didn't feel it. It almost feels like in this past month or so of watching Predators hockey, I can almost tell when they're going to win a game and when they're not.
Sure.
When they come out there with just fires lit under their butts. And that team that we saw play last night did not look like that team that
you
played
didn't
the
think
Dallas
you didn't
Stars
think
on
at 1-0.
Saturday.
You didn't think at 1-0. Janot scores. Janot's knocking people left and right. You didn't think that at 1-0 that they were going to win the game.
It just didn't feel like that same electricity that we saw against Dallas on Saturday. I just didn't that level of intensity just didn't feel like it was. I didn't feel like it was there. And not that they weren't trying hard, not that they didn't have some really good moments last night. It just overall didn't feel like that highest tier of Predators hockey that we have been seeing from them recently.
Ian, your thoughts on last night's game?
Well, I'm leaning a little bit more towards Caroline on this one. I felt like they played okay, but at times I almost felt like they were just kind of going through some motions and a little bit of a half-butt effort at times. But yeah, I thought I didn't think they played very well, to be honest with you. And Columbus played okay, and they kind of hung around. And when that happens, it only takes a goal or two for it to swing.
So those guys are harder on the team last night than I was. And you know what? I'm going to use your guys' take here. Let's just say you guys are right and I'm wrong. How can you have that kind of energy level in a game of that magnitude? Given the stakes, how can you have that kind of energy level?
That's what I'm saying is you needed to win one game. Tampa Bay took care of the business that they needed to take care of. They
let
did
me say
their
this.
part.
We can't bank on Tampa Bay doing your dirty work for you tomorrow night.
Exactly.
I just want everybody out there to know that. You cannot bank on that.
And we have seen a Dallas Stars team come out and be just really angry about losing these games. And Dallas knows that, okay, if the Predators won last night, they knew where their fate was. But nobody's fate is determined. Yes, the Predators are still in it. There's nothing that is over for the Predators whatsoever. But Dallas knows that nothing is guaranteed. So Dallas is going to come out there and they're going to say, okay, look, we're still in this fight. We're not winning, but we are still in this fight. And I think Dallas knows that and is going to play like that. So the Predators can't continue to bank on Tampa Bay taking care of their dirty work.
615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And I guess it's a fair question to ask. They brought up the effort level. Ian said, in Ian terms, half butt. Ian said a half-butt effort level.
At times, yeah.
At times. Caroline said at times lazy hockey last night. I did not think it was an energy or a want-to thing. I just think it is you need a high-end forward. You can't bank on Callie freaking Yarncroke winning you every game. You've never banked on Callie Yarncroke winning you every game. You can't bank on him winning you every game now. That's kind of that's how I feel about it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Speaking of that energy level, I asked the coach about that energy level. We'll get to that coming up next. What did the coach say? We're live out here at the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation. 615-737-1025. The wholesaling studio is powered by RumbleOn.com. Stillman Company on ESPN 1025 The Game, and we're streaming on the Game Nashville app. Yeah, John, when you guys needed a goal in that third period, I know that the pressure was there, but was there something missing tonight that you guys just didn't have, whether it was energy or something that was missing towards the end tonight?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it was energy, Jared. I think it was, we had some really good looks, and I thought, their goaltender made some really good saves when we did have some looks, but I think there was lots of rebounds and things around the area, not even just at the end, even in the second and throughout the game where, we just didn't have either, opportunities to get to the pucks, or when we got to the pucks, we had to get some second chance looks, and we didn't get in as many as I think there were opportunities to do it. So when we had good looks, I thought he made some really good saves. And then I think, against him, because he is a very good first save goalie, I think that traffic and the rebounds and the hunger in that area of the ice, it wasn't good enough to be able to get one tonight in that area.
There you go. John Hines says it was not energy. So, Caroline, you threw out energy earlier today. Ian, you threw out energy earlier today. I think it's lack of talent. I think it's a lack of a big boy forward in a big spot last night. What did you make of Hines' answer right there when I asked him, hey, what was missing? Was it energy? What was it? Hines says no, and then credits Merzlikins for the way he played last night in net.
Yeah, Merzlikins had a good game last night, but I don't think that's what went wrong. I mean, I don't think goaltending is going to stop the Predators from beating a team that they are very much so better than.
We didn't think Merzlikins was he didn't steal last night's game.
Exactly. He is a good goalie and he played a good game, but the Predators are better than the talent of goalie that the Blue Jackets have. So I understand where he's coming from, but I don't think that was the case. I mean, you could point it to talent, but you can't praise this team for what they've done the past 2 months and then all of a sudden after one loss say, oh, there's no talent. I think that it did feel very low energy last night. It didn't look like the same kind of pizzazz and spice that we've seen from the Predators in some of their big time wins. Big time wins meaning not by the number of goals, but just in crunch time. Yep. And last night needed to be a crunch time win, and it felt like in so many games, the game against Dallas on Saturday, the game against Chicago, the third game against Chicago. In those must-win games, the Predators stepped up and they won those must-win games. Sure. And last night was one of those games, and they didn't win. So I don't know if it was almost something like they felt like they had it in the bag. And Rainforth just texted me, and he said, was it the 2-game series in Columbus? Is that a trap series in between the hyped-up Dallas game and...
Text that to me. He knew not to text that to me.
See, when Hines talked about energy there, to me, it almost made it sound like, were they tired? Right? Were they gassed?
Right. You think Hines interpreted that I was asking him if they were tired last night?
A little bit, yeah.
See, this is what I hate about trying to be nice. If I say, hey, do you think you guys played hard enough last night? Then it comes off as all like, here goes Jared. Oh, Jared going after the coach again. Oh, my God. And then it's like you take a word like that, and it's like, oh, we can misconstrue it as what he meant. And
so it almost felt like, do you think they were running out of gas kind of thing, more energy, and then the second part of the question was about not, getting those second chance rebounds because they weren't putting forth enough oomph at times to get there.
Sure.
So I think he kind of answered your question both ways.
Every time they've scored a goal like that, right? I think Johansson's had a couple where he's just in front of the net and he's just swiping at it and he puts it in the back of the net. I literally tweeted out every time, get your ass to the front of the net. And guess what? It works. It works. It's worked for Granlund. It's worked for Yarncroke, although Yarncroke, he's scoring anyway. It's worked for Johansson. Look, if Johansson's not going to shoot off the rush, which he won't, and if Johansson's not going to snipe, which he won't, then at least get your butt to the front and take your shot. I think it was Carrier last night. There was a weird play where he hooks around the net, and it was kind of, I can't rember it exactly.
Got his own rebound, I think it was.
And that just shot it right into, I believe, the pad. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Oh, but that's the kind of effort level I need. That's, and again, I don't want to say I've been convinced by you guys that it was effort more than it was talent, but again, to the Hines point, hey, we gave up a lot of rebounds, or he gave up a lot of rebounds. We didn't put it home. Where you at?
Well, the Predators have been able to do a lot this season with the same amount of talent that they had out there last night.
Sure.
So, yes, I think that a lack of talent and a lack of a quote unquote big boy forward, that might be an underlying problem the Predators have had throughout the season, which is the reason that's kind of holding them back between the Carolinas, the Tampas, and the Floridas of the world. But they've had this same talent the past 2 months, and they've been able to come back from a huge deficit. So I'm not going to say that the problem last night was talent. I think that that's just been something that the Predators have dealt with and overcome this entire season.
Okay,
it's
so
just
here's my point, though, about the big boy forward. Do you have a pen?
somewhere.
Okay, so I got my bag with me. I got a bunch of pens. Ian, I want you to write this down, too. I want everybody to write down in crunch time right now. Here's a piece of paper to write it on. I don't want to see what you write.
Okay.
In crunch time, if you got to have a goal, you need a goal. Like last night's game. Like let's say last night's game is Monday night and you got to have it because you need the point against Carolina in order to get into the playoffs. So you got to have a goal. 4 minutes to go in the game. Who do you trust the most on the Predators right now? Everybody write down who they trust. I don't want to see who you wrote down. Obviously, Ian, you're going to have to go first before we go. And I am embarrassed, by the way, by my pick. Because, and I'll explain.
Is it a Quiddy Pay type of pick?
No, I mean, no. I like this more than I like Quiddy Pay. But, okay, Ian, you go first. Game on the line, Monday night, Carolina, 1 point, got to have it. Who do you trust the most right now on the ice to get you that goal?
I'll probably go Forsberg.
Okay. Caroline,
Forsberg.
Okay, see, I put Roman Yossi down. And I put a defenseman down. And I put Roman Yossi, and I'm going to be honest, because the overtime game the other night, I needed someone to put their hand up, say, I got it, and he went out and got it. But that's my,
I almost put Yossi 2. I put Granlund.
See,
I thought about
Granlund
Yossi.
2, and then Yossi 3.
Like, shouldn't we be at a point where even if it's not a true top of the league big boy guy, there's at least somebody? Like, shouldn't we be there where there's at least somebody that it's like, yes, you, go get me that goal. I just don't feel like Paris.
To your point, I mean, in this league, like, your best players have to play like it if you're going to win on the reg. No matter which team it is.
Yep.
So whoever they have tallied down as their best forwards, they're going to have to produce something.
So I see the text lines blown up. We'll get right to that next. 615-737-1025 is our number. Plus, boy, not looking good for Matt Duchene. Oh, is it not looking good for Matt Duchene?
You jinxed him, I think. You said he's playing his best hockey, and then he got benched last night.
Well, but was the coach right to do it?
Stillman, the jinxer, strikes again.
Was the coach right to do it? 615-737-1025, Stillman Company, right here at the Simmons Bank Open, out here again in Arrington. Let me tell you about car buying. That's right. I know that a lot of people get stressed out. When you got to make a big decision, a lot of people get stressed out. I am one of those people who consistently get stressed out. That's why I want to tell you about my friends at Edmunds. Buying or selling a car is one of the biggest financial decisions you can make, and my friends at Edmunds will take the headaches and guesswork out of car shopping for you. They are pros, and they've been helping people like you and me for over 50 years. Edmunds.com was the first auto information website, and they are experts in buying or selling. Not sure where to start looking? The Edmunds editorial team test drives over 300 vehicles a year, reviewing almost every car on the market so you can narrow down your search to their top-ranked SUVs, trucks, and more. Last time I bought a car, I had a whole, spectrum of different cars I was thinking about. I ended up test driving 2. With Edmunds, they test drive all these cars so you can get a review on it, and then you can probably narrow it down to 2 or 3, and then you go test drive those yourself. I think it's pretty simple. I love Edmunds. They help you buy with confidence. And again, they have tons of access of choices nearby with new and used cars. Whether you're just browsing or you know exactly what you want, Edmunds gives you that extra boost of confidence. Visit Edmunds.com to get started because for cars, there's Edmunds.
Hi, John. Matt Duchene had some pretty limited minutes tonight, it seemed. Was there a thing with matchups with him or something more you want to see out of his game? Because it's just pretty limited for him compared to probably what we typically see.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I thought Forsberg was playing really well. And I think tonight that was just really how the game went.
There you go. John Hines doesn't want to get much into that one. I don't want to talk much about that one. Matt Duchene not playing much in the third period. Couple of questions here. One, do you think Hines was honest with that answer about, I want to play Philip Forsberg a little bit more? Because it would have sounded differently had he said, I don't know, I wanted to play Yakov Trenin a little bit more. Probably would not have rang as true. And two, maybe more important here, do you think Hines made a big picture mistake? Even if he didn't like how Duchene was playing last night, do you think Hines made a mistake somewhat what it feels like circling or singling out Duchene?
First of all, I don't think he was telling the total and complete truth. I think it sounded like a whole lot of coach talk. I think he benched Duchene because Duchene wasn't playing at the level that he was supposed to be playing at. What was your second question?
Do you think it was a good idea?
I do think it was a good idea because I think that Duchene is going to come back in this next game against Carolina and be pissed off having to prove something. Would the Predators have won the game last night if Duchene was back on the ice? I don't know. It was a 2-goal deficit that they had to bring up. I don't know if Duchene is gonna make up for a 2-goal deficit. So,
well, I mean, it was an empty netter with like 1 second left. It was a 1-goal.
Essentially
game.
1 goal.
Yeah.
I'll pose that question to you. Do you think the Predators would have won last night if John Hines would have kept Duchene on the ice?
That's not why I think it was a mistake. I think it was a mistake because Matt Duchene's never played better in his career with the Predators. I mean, I think that sometimes you make these short-term things, and I know this is Hines' thing because he came in, and remember last year, Vancouver, he benched, I believe it was Duchene, Arvidsson, and Johansson. Just benched him. And a lot of people were like, good. Go out there and bench him. Good. And I remember everybody saying good at that point, and Floyd was like, I don't know, you just go ahead and start benching good players. I'm not sure that's the you might be able to get away with it once. I'm not sure you're getting away with it all the time. And the more I thought about that, and I have thought about that some this year, the more I think, hey, that may be a short-term thing of I'm not happy how you're playing tonight, so I'm going to limit your ice time. But at the same time, like, you need Matt Duchene. Like, if you have any prayer of beating Carolina, and I don't have much of a prayer that they can beat Carolina, I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think they're going to lose to Carolina in 4 or 5 games. But if you do have a prayer, which is what they as an organization have told us that they have a prayer, you ain't doing it without Matt Duchene. And I just think that the last 3 or 4 games Duchene has played are better than I've ever seen him play. And you may be mad about how he was playing last night, but guess what? You're going to have to trust that the guy that you trusted enough to give $8 million to is going to get his head out of his rear end and find a way to put a goal in the net last night. So I think it was a bad decision. I mean, you can't bench Matt Duchene every night. You cannot bench the guys who are supposed to be good players. And if you're going to do it to Duchene, you better do it to other people. And I just think Hines, I think it was like a short-sighted thing on Hines' part. Now, again, I don't think it's like catastrophic. I don't think it's the end of the world, but I think it was a bad decision on John Hines' part. I think it sent the wrong message last night. I mean, I don't think this is a simple cause and effect of, hey, we bench him today, he's going to play great tomorrow. I mean, at some point, the player is going to turn around, and he's going to see you not do that if you don't bench Philip Forsberg, or you don't bench Eeli Tolvanen, or you don't bench Ryan Johansson. He's going to see you not do that, and now you've got problems. That's just my take. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. First, though, let me tell everybody to tune into Robbie and Rex Road every weekday morning at 8:45 when the Predators have a weekday game this season for your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click, and you can win a prize pack brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. And your next chance to participate is Monday morning. Caroline Fenton, what's in the text line?
One texter texted in and said Duchene got benched because of his half-butt shot block attempt at the second goal. Watch the replay. He came out and did not honestly try to block the shot while also screening UC, which allowed Columbus to score right at the end of the second period, which was a backbreaker. He is soft and should have been benched.
Okay, so I'm not going to argue the soft thing. You going to bench Ryan Ellis?
That's a fair
Go
point.
watch the game-winning goal. You're going to bench Ryan Ellis. Go watch the 2019 Dallas series. You're going to go bench Ryan Ellis? I mean, this is the thing that the coach has to understand is that Matt Duchene, you might be able to bench Matt Duchene one time. And they benched Matt Duchene a year ago. You might be able to bench him one time. But eventually, you're going to lose the guy. Eventually, he's going to think you're picking on him. Eventually, he's going to think it's you and not him. And I get it. I understand, like, Hines is you got to earn your spot kind of coach. But you're not beating Carolina without Matt Duchene. I don't even I don't even think Matt Duchene's good. I shouldn't say I don't like him. He seems like a great guy. I don't want him on this team.
But he's not going anywhere.
So you better figure out how to make it work. And I just think that if you do that, you take him out and you do that to him. And I feel bad for Hines because Hines said he didn't bench him, but I think we all kind of think he did. You do that, you live with the consequences. And I'm not saying that they're going to lose the player, but I'd be worried about it because you can't just pull him and say that wasn't good enough and then not pull somebody else. I mean, look, coaching is hard. Coaching is hard. And I think that, Hines, I wouldn't want to put myself in that position if I was Hines. What else we have?
Kyle texted in and said, I don't care what Tampa does tomorrow. If the Predators can't win one game against Carolina, then we don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Simple as that. I think that's a little bit harsh. I think that a team can be better than you, and you can still go to the playoffs. The two aren't mutually exclusive. If the Predators can't beat Carolina, then they're just not as good as Carolina, but they're a whole heck of a lot better than the Red Wings and Blue Jackets, regardless of dropping a game to them last night. But I don't think that's necessarily fair to say that you don't deserve to be in the playoffs because you can't beat Carolina.
I mean, look, if you can't beat Carolina and Dallas takes care of business, you don't deserve into the playoffs. I mean, I'm not sitting there saying, I don't care if Dallas doesn't, win. I mean, I do care about that. Like, I will be watching tomorrow night. I will be rooting for Tampa Bay. And if Tampa Bay wins, then you're in the playoffs. And you've earned being in the playoffs. I don't disagree with the texter. I do not disagree with his idea that if you can't beat Carolina and Dallas doesn't slip up, I mean, if you don't make the playoffs, it'll be your fault. And it will be one of those you don't belong in the playoffs, you don't deserve to be in there. And that's the position you put yourself in. Whether you want to say it's because you couldn't win a game in February when you were terrible, or if you want to say it's because you gave Dallas too many overtime losses and couldn't win those games in regulation, or whether you want to say it's because you couldn't win last night. Those are all out there. I mean, I certainly believe that the Predators probably don't, nothing's given to you in this. Like, nothing's given to you. Why should it be given to you? You're supposed to earn it. So if they can't earn it and the Plinko chip doesn't fall their way and they don't get what they want out of the Dallas-Tampa game, because I think Dallas is going to beat Chicago in both games. If you don't get what you want there, I guess I don't have a ton of sympathy for you, I guess is the way I'm putting it right now.
Well, for the Stars to beat up the Preds for a playoff position, they need 5 of the next 6 points, correct?
Sure.
So let's say if the Stars don't get 5 of the next 6 points, I don't necessarily think that they will, but who knows what will happen, then you can make that the exact same argument that if you don't win the next 5 of your next 6 games and the Nashville drops 2 games in a row to Carolina, then the Stars don't deserve to be in the playoffs. You can apply that same exact logic.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas doesn't belong in the playoffs. I mean, Dallas, that loss to the Red Wings was the one that totally shifted everything, and I've always believed if you can't beat the Red Wings, and this goes back to the Predators, if you can't beat the Blue Jackets, you don't belong in the playoffs. And I certainly feel that way. I mean, I think that I went into the season and I said, okay. Now, this was assuming Dallas was going to be good because they went to the Cup final, but not assuming that Florida was going to be as good as they were, so just replace the 2 teams. I said, look, Dallas, Tampa, the 2 teams in the Cup final last year, and Carolina. Those 3 teams are probably better than you. And then you and Florida and Columbus are probably, in that next level. And then there's Detroit and Chicago. Now, it ended up being, flop Dallas with Florida, take Columbus totally out of it, put them with Detroit, maybe move Chicago up a little bit. Yeah. But it ultimately ended up being the same thing. And I said all year, the way this was going to play out was you were going to have to win all your games against Detroit and Chicago, or in this case, Detroit and Columbus. Win all your games against Detroit and Columbus. Try to steal a couple of games against Dallas, Carolina, or Tampa Bay, and then you were going to have to come out over 50% against that next tier. The Florida and the Columbuses are now, obviously, it's Dallas. You gave Dallas too many points during the course of the season by winning in overtime and winning in shootouts. You gave them too many points. And I think that's part of it. And then the second part of it was you had to beat the bad teams. You lost last night to Columbus. I guess I'm kind of here with the idea of the Predators don't deserve to make the playoffs if they can't beat Carolina. I'm not sure I agree with that.
I don't think that's fair.
But I mean, you lost to Columbus.
Well, yeah, that's true. If you
So
can't
what
take
should
care
be
of business
fair?
against Columbus,
Yeah,
but saying just because
see,
you
I
can't
think
win,
here's what I think is fair. I think it's fair if you don't make the playoffs because you lost last night.
Yes, I think that is fair, but I don't think it's fair to say, you can't beat the best team in your division, so you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Not at all. Let's say Dallas loses out. I don't think that's going to happen, but let's say they lose out. The Predators are in the playoffs. You don't think they deserve to be there just because they didn't beat Carolina? No, the other team that would come in would be Dallas, and they lost out the rest of their games. So it's If the Predators don't make the playoffs, yes, you can point fingers to that game against Columbus. You could point fingers to other games that have happened throughout the year, yes. But I mean, saying that it's fair or not fair to get into the playoffs just because you can't beat Carolina, I don't think that's necessarily fair. To narrow it down to these last two games and say, you can't beat this team, you don't belong there.
It may come to that Monday night, though.
It could. It very well could.
It may come to that. And I think the Predators have got to be honest with themselves. I think they've got to be honest. And they've been honest the whole year most of the time. The trade deadline I thought was probably a moment where they weren't completely honest with themselves. But, I mean, I think they need to – I'm kind of with the texter. I mean, you're probably now going to have to – when you don't win against Detroit or Columbus, it means you have to make it up against Tampa or Carolina. Here's Carolina. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get in. By the way, the TD Power Hour coming up at 3 o'clock. So Turron will share his breakdown, his thoughts from the full Titans draft and his thoughts on the Rashad Weaver news. Do not miss the Cure for Our Friends Cystic Fibrosis Golf Tournament May 15th at the 12 Stones Golf Course in Goodlettsville. Some of the teams include retired Titan football players who will be hanging around after the tournament. Cure for Our Friends still needs silent auction items. And more information can be found at cureForOurFriends.org. Thank you to Dad's Towing, Mitchell Motors, and Nashville Wrecker Services for being the tournament sponsor for the 2021 Cure for Our Friends Cystic Fibrosis Golf Tournament. Stillman Company, we are live at the Simmons Bank Open. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. We're streaming the Game Nashville app. We are at the Grove in Arrington for the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation. Rounds 1 and 2 starting today. Very excited about that. Boy, I mean, I said my Twitter's blowing up. The text line's blowing up. Everybody's got thoughts. I mean, the anger level.
Heated.
The anger level from last night's Predators game. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most angry you can be, what were you about last night's Preds game?
I mean, the most angry I've ever been. I think last night I wasn't mad. I was just disappointed. It was just like, come on.
What was worse, last night's Predators game or the Titans draft?
Oh, maybe the Titans draft.
It was
The
definitely
Titans draft was pretty
Definitely
bad.
the Titans draft. I don't know what we're talking about over
I
there.
mean, the Titans draft, it was just like, you could have had it. It was right there, but they just didn't do the right thing that they were supposed to do. And that was what the Preds game felt last
definitely the
night.
Titans
It
draft.
was like, you had it. You could have just been done. You could have just sighed a sigh of relief.
It's definitely
But
the Titans
you
draft.
didn't.
And here's why it's the Titans draft. Because if you draft well, you can win a Super Bowl based off the picks you make. If the Predators win and make the playoffs, they'll be in the playoffs for a week and a half. And then they'll play Carolina. And then we'll be back here at the Simmons Bank Golf Open talking about Trevor Cohn from Concord, North Carolina, and Kent Boulay from Bowling Green, who are teeing
I love
off at
him. Good friend of mine.
2:11 o'clock. There you go. Time for headlines with Caroline.
We're spanning the sports world. It's Headlines with Caroline on Stillman Company, right here on Nashville's best sports talk,
ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Well, there's a whole heck of a lot of drama going on in the NHL right now. The Rangers came out and released a statement about Capitals player Tom Wilson. He punched a Ranger player, punched his head into the ice, and the Rangers came out and said, hey, we are asking for the firing of the Department of Player Safety. His name's George Paros.
Well, that was after no suspension was given
After
to
no
Wilson.
suspension, he was fined $5,000, which is the max amount that you can be fined before you were suspended. And the Rangers came out and said, hey, we don't think this is safe. They called it a horrifying act of violence and said that he should have been fired indefinitely, talking about Tom Wilson. Should have been suspended indefinitely. So the NHL came out and they fined the Rangers $250,000
They did.
for their, quote, public comments. The NHL said, public comments of the nature issued by the Rangers that were personal in nature and demeaning of a league executive will not be tolerated. While we don't expect our clubs to agree with every decision rendered by the Department of Player Safety, the extent to which the Rangers expressed their disagreement was unacceptable. And then last night in the Rangers-Capital game, there was an all-out brawl in the very beginning of the game. And I'm saying, if the Rangers are so concerned about player safety, don't you think a brawl isn't necessarily the best thing that you could possibly do?
So I think this is the typical sports thing, and this is something that this is where leagues got to take this seriously, because if you don't take it seriously, if you don't take care of something, these players will do it themselves. And that was the message I think the Rangers sent last night. I find this to be a lot more dangerous in baseball. If you don't do something, we're going to do it ourselves because someone's getting 99 in the back. And if you miss the back, sometimes you end up in the head. And I think that's something that I really worry about. I mean, last night, Tom Wilson got plastered as soon as he got on the ice. And the all-out melee started the game. That's a bad look for hockey. I mean, I know that, there's that old-time hockey, oh, yeah, drop the mitts, let it go. I mean, I know there's some of that people get excited about. That's a bad look for hockey. Like, you should not have two premier teams, the Rangers and the Capitals, playing each other, and it looked like the beginning to the movie Happy Gilmore. Like, it shouldn't be that way. And I do think the league messed up. And I think, the NHL, of all of the leagues, baseball is number one, where baseball just simply screws everything up. Hockey's a very close number two. I mean, I even think with these new TV deals hockey's got, I'm a little worried that hockey's going to screw some stuff up with these TV deals. But I certainly thought they made a huge mistake here. And I get the $250,000 fine. But if I'm Gary Bettman, I really, really am worried about what just happened because Tom Wilson is not going to stop being the player that he is. And I think in turn, it's only going to escalate the drama and subsequent violence. I think it's going to escalate that more. And I'll give you another example. It's because I'm sure there are some people who are like, that's hockey. Let them go. Let them fight. Let them do whatever. Could you imagine an NFL game where at the snap, everybody just stops and starts fighting? I mean,
Well, that's not necessarily a fair comparison.
no, but don't they tell us the same thing in football? If you don't take care of it, we'll take care of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's sports.
You don't want that. Goodell would never let that happen. Goodell would suspend both coaches before he would let that happen in a football game. And I think Gary Bettman should be embarrassed for what happened last night. And I understand why he fined the Rangers, and I get it, but I think he should be embarrassed because you can't let that happen in your sport. What's next?
Another little feud between two teams, but in baseball. So Dusty Baker, the Astros manager, the Astros just had a road series in New York. I mean, fans were booing the Astros. Fans were booing. Fans were booing Dusty Baker. And
The chant was blank the Astros. And they were literally in a 20% capacity stadium. You could hear it loud and clear, blank the Astros.
Well, I don't know if you know, New Yorkers are pretty hostile. New Yorkers love their Yankees, so
Sure. And the Yankees are the team that directly got cheated.
Yes, the Yankees could have had a World Series run if the Astros had not cheated in 2017. And Dusty Baker said, as far as I'm concerned, it should be over with. There are only 5 guys that are still on this team from 2017. So are people booing the player, the organization, the uniform? All of it. They're mad. They're upset. And don't say that they should just get over it. The Astros had virtually zero punishment following their cheating in 2017. So if all that you have to put up with is some booing when you're on the road in New York, deal with it. Expect boos every single trip that you take to New York from now until forever, because they will not forget what could have been in 2017.
I don't think it's so much what could have been in 2017. This goes back to the Tom Wilson thing. If nobody's going to get punished for it, then I'm going to make sure that I punish you. And I think when Dusty Baker took this job, the only reason Dusty Baker got this job is because their manager got fired for cheating. And I think Dusty was kind of brought in to kind of be the grandfather of the team and bring some goodwill and have some people say, okay, Dusty, he's a good guy, and maybe they're good guys because Dusty's a good guy. And I understand Dusty's wanting to stick up for his guys, and that's probably the right thing to do. But don't do the crime if you can't do the time. And the Astros' time is relatively, weak in comparison to what it probably should have been. But it's like O.J. Simpson not feeling welcome by the Hall of Fame committee. Like, O.J., don't do the crime if you can't do the time.
Like, I'm sorry if you don't feel welcomed in this little kumbaya circle, but you killed your wife. So you kind of just got to expect that.
Don't forget about Ron Goldman.
And also Ron Goldman.
What's next?
So
Were you even alive when that happened?
No, I don't think so. What year was that?
I believe it was 94.
That was well before I was born.
Okay.
Yes, so no. But I did watch the documentary, so I feel very well versed on the subject. So Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul, for those who don't know, Logan Paul is
Is he like a YouTuber?
ex-Disney star turned YouTuber turned cajillionaire because he's made so much money off of TikTok, YouTube, social media, whatever it may be. And now he's a boxer. And he's actually had a pretty successful boxing career, but he will be fighting Floyd Mayweather in Miami. And Chad Johnson, legendary Bengal, if you want to call him that, he agreed to fight in an exhibition match against another athlete or celebrity leading up to that fight. His statement to the media was, everything that I do in life I'm good at, except for golf. So I'm glad that he can at least have a little bit of humility there and accept the fact that he's not maybe the best golfer.
So I am done with Floyd Mayweather fights. I'm never watching another Floyd Mayweather fight again. I have watched 6, and they're just so boring. And it's, for years he could have fought Pacquiao and didn't. And then finally fought Pacquiao when Manny was 38 years old. And it wasn't the same fighter anymore. Then they try to convince us to watch him fight Conor McGregor. And I watched the fight. I'm not going to lie. I watched it. Now, I didn't pay to watch it, thank goodness. But I watched. So I watched him fight when I was in high school. Floyd Mayweather fought De La Hoya. And I watched that. And I believe that was a split decision in favor of Mayweather. But De La Hoya was so down the line of his career at this point. Then, same thing with Manny when he fought Pacquiao. Then I watched him fight Conor McGregor, which was almost like watching Tim Tebow play baseball. It's not even his sport. And now he's fighting a YouTuber. Out. I am out. I am not interested in watching Floyd Mayweather fight. Now, you put Canelo Alvarez out there against somebody who's good. Give me a big heavyweight. that I can get excited about to fight like I did when I was a kid when it was Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. Give me something like that. Tyson, Holyfield. Give me something like that. I'll probably watch. But I am done. Out. See ya. Forget about it with Floyd Mayweather fights. Those are headlines with Caroline. I can't watch Floyd Mayweather fighting, but it's so boring. It's just, oh my goodness.
I met him as a kid. Had
Floyd
no idea.
Mayweather?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we were at dinner, and he was at the same restaurant, and I was a kid. I had no idea who he was, and I was like, "Who is this short dude with the giant watch on? Why is everyone wanting to talk to him?"
I've met your dad before, and I'd be a little worried that he didn't step in there and say, "Go the other way, Caroline." That's how I probably feel like he should have reacted. TD is in the house. The TD Power Hour coming up next. What did TD think of the draft? What do you think of the Titans draft? Did he love it? Hate it? Feel like they didn't address me? What do you think? We'll do that next with Turron. Again, we're live at the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation out here at the Grove in Arrington. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game, and we're streaming on the Game Nashville app. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 102.5 The Game, live today from the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation at the Grove in Arrington. Caroline Fenton is here, Ian is here, and TD is here for the TD Power Hour, Turron, presented by Freedom Tire, guys. But before we get into that, a big congratulations is in order to the proud papa himself, Turron Davenport, whose daughter is graduating this weekend from Howard College. Congratulations, TD.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I'll be an even more proud papa because that's when it's official. Howard University, you will no longer get checks from me. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
I was thinking that in my head. I was like, is that also the official off the Turron Davenport payroll? Who knows?
Yeah.
But congratulations, TD.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I want to get to this. Before we go to the Rashad Weaver news, because I want to hear what you have to say about that. What did you think about the Titans draft? You know how I felt about it because you were sitting right there next to me on Thursday and Friday. And I thought they did some things I liked on Saturday. But, TD, I'm scratching my head with what I saw last week of the Titans draft. The more I hear other people talk about the Titans draft, the more I scratch my head. What did you think about it? You know, what you liked, didn't like, in kind of overall summary?
I think overall it was a solid draft. And that's obviously excluding the news that came out on Monday. I think if you look at the players that they acquired, they got some guys that are ready to contribute immediately. And if – it's a gigantic capital if Caleb Farley is capable of playing from the start, that'll be a major coup for them. So I'm not going to have the cancel Christmas mindset, but I do think that they could have done better. I still think there's – a slot receiver left to be obtained, and there's a certain kind of slot receiver that I'm referring to when I say that. We could get into that a little bit later, but overall, I think they did a solid job. It's tough for me to, be too critical. The Monty Rice pick, I think that's something that, that one is a little sketchy. I think they could have gotten a player like that later, if not that very player. But we could get into that also.
See, I was going to go into the Rice pick because I wonder what they saw. Because as soon as, the draft was over, I kind of did a lot of homework on all of these guys, just looking up, 40 times and what certain guys had written about them. And again, I know that what, Mel Kiper, Dane Brugler, or, whomever writes about it doesn't necessarily make it fact. But I said this on Monday, TD. The Rice pick, it feels like the Wesley Woodyard, Avery Williamson kind of linebacker. That is a guy who is, is big and can hit. But Avery Williamson was a 5th-round pick. Those are guys you can get. And I still am scratching my head wondering, what did they see in Rice? Or is there a plan for Rice that we don't know yet?
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. And I've heard some say, okay, this is the succession plan for Rashaan Evans. Well, if that was the case, they probably would have been better getting Derek Barnes out of Purdue because he's basically the same player as Evans is as far as a guy that could trigger and really blow stuff up, and then also has some pass rush ability. They're very similar. These guys got to school, each of them, Evans at Alabama, Barnes at Purdue, and they made their mark as a pass rusher, and then got shifted to inside linebacker and kind of went bonkers. And I think that's the succession plan, the right one. Now you got Chaz Surratt, another guy I know they had some interest in. He was a linebacker, former quarterback out of North Carolina. Another one that I could think of, KJ Britt. I know that they liked KJ Britt, but obviously they didn't pick him. And Monty Rice is the guy they arrived upon. It's an interesting pick. I just want to see how it works out. We know right off the bat he'll be a special teams guy, but I think you're right. They could have gotten that a bit later.
Do you think there's a possibility that they went with Monty Rice? Because I tweeted this out as a theory. I have no sourcing on this. Mm-hmm. Kyle Pitts gets taken in Atlanta. Obviously, Hayden Hurst has his 5th-year option declined. Maybe that's a switch because, and I don't, watch a lot of Atlanta Falcon football, but I don't even know the guy who plays middle linebacker next to Deion Jones. We know, obviously, that Dean Pease knows Rashaan Evans. Is that a possible 1-for-1 deal, Evans for Hayden Hurst, and then Hayden Hurst can come in and be the tight end? Because to your point, TD, I'm still trying to wrap my head, okay, if this is the Rashaan Evans succession plan, does it really have to happen in 2021, or can we not wait till 2022 for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good idea. And you got two guys on the last year of their deal. I could see something like that happening. And just for clarity, Chad Surratt was selected before the Titans had the pick. I was just saying that that's a guy I know that they had interest in. But getting back to Evans, yeah, it's interesting because when you saw him in that second year with Dean Pease, that's when you really saw him just blossom. And he's one of those players that, in my opinion, he has to know absolutely what he has to do. Everything has to be down pat because he's a guy that's a more reactionary player. He's one of those guys you can't tie up and have, and really no player is good in this situation, but you can't allow him to be on the field thinking too much. He has too much ability to just, like I said, trigger and diagnose and make something happen, and I think that's the issue. So you put him back into Dean Pease's scheme, I think that is a good match, and obviously Arthur Smith, the head coach, knows about him too.
TD, what did you think? We know that you liked Elijah Molden before the draft. They take him at 100. You brought up Caleb Farley. Are they good right now at corner? I mean, like with Jenkins, Fulton, Farley, Molden, Kevin Johnson, and I'm trying to think, who's one of the Breon Borders, I believe, is still on the roster. Like, are they – like, can we look at the Titans at corner? Chris Jackson still on the roster. Can we look at the Titans at corner right now and say, okay, you guys are set, good to go?
And they also have Greg Maben, who they signed today and released Kareem Orr, which was an interesting one for me. I always liked Kareem Orr. I thought he had really good ball skills. But as far as the top end of that, I think if, and again, I can't stress, capital I, capital F, Caleb Farley is ready to go. I think they are clean at corner. And when I say ready to go for Farley, I mean back to what he was pre-injury. And pre-injury, that dude was he was the truth, So if they could get that, they'll be good. But I like the versatility they have. Right, you got Christian Fulton, who could play slot or on the outside. Elijah Molden, he could play on the outside if need be. Don't get that twisted. You could put him on the outside, but he's best as a nickel. But he could also play single high. I like that versatility that he brings. And Jack Rabbit Jenkins, man, let me tell you something. You want guys who are feisty and who are pure man cover guys who could take on, right? Mike Vrabel mentioned cat coverage, right? That's your cat. That's something that Jenkins specializes in. And you could watch 2019, he took on Stephon Diggs, basically shut him down. He had a couple of assignments one-on-one, and this is a team that had Marshawn Lattimore on the field, and he was still taking on the number one. So I like that for the Titans. Now, obviously, Jenkins is 32 years old. We'll see how he can continue to play with that age, you know what I mean? But I think he's going to be fine. So I think they're good at corner. I don't think it's really going to be mandatory. And if you got a guy to add someone that is, and if you got a guy like Kevin Johnson as your number 4, I think you're in a pretty good spot.
TD, if I had gone into the weekend and I had told you that at wide receiver and tight end collectively, Dez Fitzpatrick in the 4th round would be it, what would you have said?
I would have been disappointed. I would have said that they didn't check all the boxes because they still need that slot receiver. They need, and when I say slot receiver, I'm talking about, because Dez Fitzpatrick, he could bump inside and play the slot, but he's not going to give you that guy that, on 3rd and 7, run that spot up route at 8 yards, catch the ball and fall down, right? He's not going to give you that guy to go in the slot and get matched up with a nickel corner and run those choice routes, those jerk routes and those type of things and get open. He's not going to give you that. I don't know who on that roster will. I know Cam Batson is the guy we keep seeing mentioned as someone to play that slot. I personally like Cam Batson better on the outside. So I think that is still missing, that Adam Humphries type, that Trent Taylor type. Trent Taylor is a really good player. Well, I'm not going to say really good. He's a solid player. Let me correct myself. He's a free agent, and he's a guy that I know in San Francisco, they wanted to get him in the mix, and it just didn't work. He is a capable slot receiver. You need something like that. Jamison Crowder. You look at the Jets, right? They got Elijah Moore, right? And you mix him in with Denzel Mims and Corey Davis. They have a packed receiver room now. Is Crowder expendable? If he is, that's a trade I would look at making because he will give you a consistent playmaker at the slot position, and I'm talking about consistent production. He's a really good player that I think could be available.
Well, that's kind of the route I wanted to go, which is, tight end, pass rusher behind Landry and Dupree. Because I asked Robinson the question, TD, on Saturday about restructuring Tannehill's contract, and it sounded to me like they're open to restructuring Tannehill's contract to create space. I wonder if they are looking at June 1st and saying, okay, that's like free agency part 2 for our team, because there are clearly a lot of holes that they walked away from the draft with.
I'm going to say this, right? I don't think this team is going to have to trade for Zach Ertz. I think Zach Ertz is going to get released. And Howie Roseman, he spoke about trying to make the situation the best for both parties, right? They're looking to get him in a good situation. Like, they're going to try not to send him to a team like Detroit or something like that, right? Where you go and your career just bombs, right? They want him to be in a good situation, but obviously you don't want him to be in a situation where he could come back and hurt you immediately. So ideally, they would trade him to an AFC team. No one seems to be biting because you have that big contract. It's a $12 million number, but they could release him and stretch that cap number over the next couple of years for them meaning the Eagles, and that would make Zach Ertz expendable. I think he's a guy in a modest deal could come in and be a stopgap. And look, he's not the most dominating blocker, but he does what I feel Anthony Ferguson can eventually start doing well, and that's just getting in the way. And if you could get in the way and keep a guy from having a clear path to the back, you're blocking. So Ertz would be a good option.
I give Ferguson credit because I've said, time and time again, he can't block. The Derrick Henry game-winning touchdown, that direct snap against Houston last year, Ferguson did a fantastic job, TD, of getting in the way.
Yep.
And it was just like, hey, I'm just going to use my arms, my shoulders, my back, my butt, my whatever, just to keep you from getting to tackle Derrick Henry. And I think that's probably what Ferguson is going to be asked to do more of. TD's with us, 615-737-1025. Get your questions in for TD. We will answer them at the end of the segment or the end of the hour with TD. The TD Power Hour presented by Freedom Tire. Guys, coming up next, what to make of the Rashad Weaver situation, both the pick itself and what all has happened since. We'll get into that with TD coming up next. It's the TD Power Hour. We're live from the wholesaling studio powered by RumbleOn.com at the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation. It's Stillman Company on ESPN 1025 The Game.
is this something where someone in security or a scout should, be monitoring things like this and make
or Rashad Weaver didn't know that maybe he didn't commit a crime and he didn't realize some charges were going to be filed on him. I think you have to let this play out, find out all the facts that are involved. Now, if I would have called Rashad Weaver up and asked him, has he been in any trouble recently? And he said, no, now I have another issue, a player that's not being upfront with us. But, I'm not quite sure the whole situation here. I've read about it. I've heard about it. But if he's innocent in this situation, he would never have suspected any kind of charges were ever going to be filed. So it would be hard for him to kind of be up.
Shocking development. Turron Davenport is with us, presented by Freedom Tire Guys. And TD, it's funny because I did not know about the Weaver news until I was pulling into my garage. And I, finally get in the garage. I press park on, put it in park, and I take out my phone, and I see your tweet about the Rashad Weaver news, and I'm like, oh, what now? Oh, what now? And so then the news comes out, and I think for a lot of Titan fans, that was kind of a, oh, my goodness, what now kind of moment. Now that we've had a couple days to digest everything, we've had some reporting, from Paul Kaharski saying other teams knew. We've had some reporting from Buck Rising that has kind of said that, not questioning Kaharski's reporting, but questioning the merits of that report. What do you make of the whole situation with Weaver, how it played out, the position the Titans are in, and kind of what we know and what we don't know?
I think really first and foremost, it's a situation that is very unfortunate. It's terrible. No female should have to go through that. No person, period. Yep. And nobody should even have the thoughts, not let alone the comments, the thoughts that Rashad did reportedly have that was coming from the complaint, the criminal complaint. So let's make that clear. I think really it's a situation where so many people have to just not relax, but just allow things to play out. And Blake Bedenfield said it best when he said that's what we need to do, just let the details be flushed out. I don't know for sure that that's something that the Titans should have known. And here's why. You have police reports, right? And those are police reports, but then you have the actual complaint wasn't filed until Friday. Now, I don't know what time it was filed on Friday, but let's say it was filed a little bit later on Friday, right? And I don't know how familiar you are with government buildings, but typically after 3:30, stuff just for the most part shuts down. So let's say it was filed at that point. Now mind you, remember, East Coast time is an hour ahead of us. So what if it was filed at 3 o'clock our time? How could the Titans know about that the next day? I don't think it's possible for them to know about that.
Sure.
And there are some other things that I've heard. I have to further report it before I could say it, but I don't think it's really likely that anyone knew about that. And again, this is no slight on Paul Kaharski because he's probably the most thorough reporter in this market. I firmly believe that. So it's no slight on his reporting, but I think it's a slight on what the people he reached out to said. Because just like I told Ryan Porth yesterday, I was like, I could sit here and watch cars go 50, 60 miles an hour out here on Murfreesboro Pike and then see an accident and say, I knew it was going to be a car accident. It's real easy to do that. Like, it's easy now to be, oh, yeah, I knew about that. You know what I mean? Why would the scout say, oh, I didn't know about that? Because then it makes it look like his team and his scouting department is inept. So I think you have to look at all those things, and that's in no way trying to get the Titans off, and that's in no way trying to get Rashad Weaver off, because I feel if other teams did, in fact, know, and they didn't, shame on them. And if, in fact, Rashad Weaver did these things, absolute shame on him.
Yep. And to your point, too, about the reporting, I don't question, I said this on Tuesday or whenever Paul Kaharski reported it, I don't question, and I know a lot of people have their own opinions about Paul one way or another, but I don't question the reporting side of Paul Kaharski. I do not question, whether or not he's reporting what he's been told. I have heard similar things to you, and there's similar things that there's not enough there to go with it. There's not enough there to tell the people about it. But when people say there's two sides to every story, there is another side. I think I'm hearing a similar side that you've heard, and it does make me kind of stop and say, well, maybe there is a chance that nobody in this league knew. Yep. And it's just if that's the case, then it's unfortunate for Robinson and it's unfortunate from the Titans. But I also kind of have this, I brought this up the other day, the Rick Pitino thing, where I don't think Rick Pitino knew about any of the things that happened under his watch. Now, maybe I'm naive, but I know Rick pretty well. I don't think Rick knew. But by the second time that he has an assistant coach going out there and offering $100,000 for a player, sorry, Rick, it's your job to know. Yeah. Do we feel like the Titans should be in a similar position where we should say, it's your job to know? A lot of people were surprised by Isaiah Wilson, but it's your job to know. Or is it fair to sit there and say, how can you know if this is filed at 3 o'clock on Friday? How are you supposed to know on Saturday? I guess I'm kind of torn there, TD.
And that's the whole thing. The Isaiah Wilson situation, this guy has such a negative effect on this franchise. It's stupid, right? Because here we are, a situation where it's very possible for them not to have known, but because of the Isaiah Wilson thing and how other teams did apparently know that there were have red flags and they kind of blew through that stop sign and they still drafted him. Now the benefit of the doubt is put away mostly, for the most part, right, for those who want to jump to have a rash to judgment. And I think that's the big problem. And it's just it goes back to what I said many times about the Isaiah Wilson situation. Human behavior is unpredictable. And I just think, even if Weaver didn't do this, I think it was moronic. It was silly to be in a bar at 2 a.m. 2 weeks before what is probably the biggest night of your 23-year-old life. And that's the thing I think is really the big issue. And it reminds me of a book that I read years ago called The Draft. And it actually talked about Chris Canty. And Chris Canty was coming out of Virginia. He was supposed to – shout out Virginia, my man John Glennon. He was supposed to be a very high draft pick. He went to a club. There was a fight. A bottle got broken. It hit his eye, and it damaged his eye, and he ended up falling severely in the draft. And as a matter of fact, even to this day, he has to wear glasses, to keep that eye. And I don't know the scientific, the medical term, but he still has to wear glasses for that, even to this day. So I say it all to say, you got to treat things with the Wayne Gretzky treatment, right? Remove yourself from situations, at least for that small time period before the draft. I mean, for heaven's sake, just give yourself 30 more days of just mellowing out before the draft. You gotta do that. You can't get yourself in these situations. And
well, TD, I told this story on air the other day about why I never smoked pot as a kid. People that, and I have no problem with anybody who smokes pot. I mean, I think I've been pretty honest that I just kind of think it should be decriminalized or legalized. But that's neither here nor there. But I never smoked pot as a kid because I was so afraid, of what it would be like for my career, whether I was working in women's basketball or getting into broadcasting, or I was so worried about it that, I, like everybody else, had friends that smoked pot, and I just was never interested in it because of kind of that sense of, what happens to me, if I get caught. I have friends, and TD, I'm sure you have friends like this. I'm sure we all have friends that once you kind of become an adult, you maybe have some friends that are a little too wild or do things that you don't do. And it's that he does that. I don't do that. But I went through a solid period of my life where I stayed away from that because I just knew, I was on the radio here or I was on the radio in Louisville, and I knew that if that guy did something and it came back on me or I was there, that the story is then, local radio host is there for this that he has nothing to do with. And I think that when you are in that draft process, if I'm the Titans, it was something that does bother me. It's not what bothers me the most, but what bothers me is that dude, what are you doing? Like, we want guys who love football and are committed to football. And that doesn't mean you can't go to the bar. But it's just like, you got to know, like, dude, you're an NFL player now. You're more famous than everybody around you. You have more to lose than everybody else. You have got to keep yourself out of that situation, whether or not he did something wrong. And I think that's kind of it's clearly an eye-opening experience for him. But for the Titans, that would concern me, even if what I'm hearing from the Pittsburgh police or what my research now is telling me, says, okay, this is this, and he should be okay and still be on the team. I would still be the decision-making would have me a little concerned.
I hear what you're saying, and all of that sounds marvelous. But I'm now going to, because I know at 23 years old, I was wilding out. You know what I'm saying? So I'm now going to sit here and say, hey, this kid, no. I get how you could put yourself in this situation. I think the biggest thing above all everything, he has to take this situation and learn from it. I tell my daughters over and over again, I say, for every action you have, there's a consequence, right? And for every consequence, there's a lesson to be learned. And I think that's really what has to be applied here. Even if there isn't any criminal aspect of this, right? Even if he didn't touch her, he had the thought, right? So you have to learn, okay, how can I curve my thoughts to where these are not the things that I'm thinking? How, or even how could I curb my thoughts? A, to I'm not thinking this, and B, I'm not saying it, right? Because how does it work? Thoughts, verbs, action, right? So you want to stop the train from getting to, from even starting, let alone getting to the third stop, which is actions. So I think that's important. But at the same time, like I said, this is a young man. I get it. I was 23 and going to different places that I shouldn't have been going. And it just comes down to how are you going to take this as a learning lesson. But you have to understand that this has cost you an awful lot. And going forward, the benefit of the doubt is not going to be there. So going forward, you have to be much more selective with where you go. Hey, Broadway, it's opening up again, right? And it's attractive. I mean, even for someone like myself who doesn't frequent bars and stuff like that. I walk the strip and I'm like, wow, man, it looks like they're having a good time. So it's a lot harder for a young man, a 23-year-old man, to resist that, but he has to understand the importance of resisting it because this right here is a huge hiccup, and it could be a huge stop if it goes further as far as it being unearthed that he did actually do the things that he's accused of.
Can I ask a personal question?
Certainly.
Did you have hair at 23 years old?
I absolutely did, and I still could have hair now. I shave my hair every day. As a matter of fact, that's why I got here at 2:56 because I shaved my hair in the shower. I got to shave my head every day. So, yes, I had hair. I had waves.
I'm trying to picture it in my head right now, 23-year-old Turron.
In the hood, we call them 360s, man. My hair used to make you seasick, man. I had the waves, I'm trying to tell you.
Man, I'm trying to picture 23-year-old TD in my head. I'm not sure I can totally do it, but that's okay. TD is with us. Again, TD is presented by FreedomTireGuys.com, Nashville's premier tire guys. Coming up next, we talked a lot about the Titans draft. What about the other teams in the AFC South? Trevor Lawrence is in Jacksonville. Davis Mills is in Houston, and the Colts still don't have a left tackle. What does TD think about that? We know now what he thinks about Davis Mills. Stillman Company, it's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman Company is live today from the Simmons Bank Open for this 102.5 The Game from Saturday from 10 to noon for the Nashville SC pre-match party at the Hard Rock Cafe downtown. Party before the match. Get some game swag, and you can register to win a pair of tickets to a Nashville SC game. The match is at 12:30. Get your tickets now for Nashville SC at NashvilleSC.com and tune in to the game on ESPN 94.9 pregame at 12:15. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour. So, Turron, we've talked about the Titans draft up and down. What did you think of the rest of the AFC South? Obviously, Jacksonville, pole position. You would assume they would have a pretty decent draft. Indianapolis, they don't have a left tackle right now. And the Texans, well, they're dealing with Bill O'Brien as general manager, and that probably hurt their draft a little bit.
Yeah,
what did you
remnants.
think about the makeup of the AFC South drafts?
I think Davis Mills at 3 is you laugh at that. I don't really think he's a good player. I do like what the Texans did, though, in getting Nico Collins, and they got Brevin Jordan, too. So they got some playmakers there, 2 guys that I obviously liked. So we'll see how the offense comes around. They were able to go ahead and get Tyrod Taylor there in case Deshaun Watson does not play this year. So I'm curious what they'll look like, rather. The Jaguars, I think they clean shop. I think they had one of the best picks overall. And it should be that way when you're picking first each round. But, you look at Trevor Lawrence, you look at Travis Etienne, you got Clemson South now, so that's a good situation for the offense. I know James Robinson is a guy that you like, and, he's someone that will be a complimentary. They'll have a nice 1-2. But Tyson Campbell, I like that pick a lot. Tyson Campbell, a corner that could, he has really good coverage skills. He has good coverage traits, let's put it that way. Andre Sisco was a good pick. I thought that was value there. I think they did well. They got themselves a left tackle. Top to bottom, they did a really good job. And they signed Kenny Randall, a guy who I thought was a really good player. He was, as a nose tackle, was eligible for he was one of the finalists for the Cliff Harris Award. So that's the Division II Heisman. As a nose tackle, to get that, you got to be doing something right. So I think the Jaguars had the best draft. I'm not crazy about the critic pay pick, but I do like the Dayo Odangbo pick. I think the Colts also did a good job later getting Michael Strachan, who comes out of Charleston. Ironically, that's the same school that Kenny Randall went to, but you're talking about a guy 6'5", 220, could run like a deer. I think that's really going to give them some size once he's able to make that jump, into the league. That's going to be good. I think the Colts did a good job too.
TD, do you buy the Chris Ballard hype? Because I think he's a good general manager. I mean, I think he does a decent job. I don't think he's a great general manager. I mean, I think I need to see, probably find a true solution at quarterback, and maybe Carson Wentz is the guy. I don't know, but find a solution at quarterback before I start anointing you greatest general manager of all time. I hear the national media talk about Chris Ballard, and it's like they just think that he is the best drafter of all time. What do you make of the Ballard hype?
I think he is a pretty good drafter, but, I mean, Paris Campbell, a guy that I really liked coming out of Ohio State, but he had injuries at Ohio State. No coincidence, he has a lot of injuries now. So, I mean, I'm not going to act like he's, reincarnated the Baltimore Colts, right, with Johnny Unitas and those championship teams, but I think he has done a good job. I do like what he's done to address the offensive line. What I love about him, he's not afraid to go interior guys in the first round and even top 10, right, with Quentin Nelson. And then you got Ryan Kelly. Those were 2 really, really, really good draft picks. I love how he got the safety out of Utah last year. That was a really good pick. But he also picked Malik Hooker, right? And Malik Hooker, isn't even on the team anymore. So
Rock Ya-Sin in the second round.
Yeah, the Temple.
I thought the Titans went right at him in that second game.
Yeah. And he still has a lot of room for improvement. Getting Kenny Moore, that was a good move. I think he's done some good things, but I'm not going to act like he's done a whole bunch of, outstanding things. And I think he gets a lot of credit for cap management. But at the same time, Darius Leonard, too, can't forget him. At the same time, if you have the money and you're on the cusp the way this team is, spend it. You know what I mean? Spend it. Use it. And he didn't really use it this year. And I think he's guilty of not separating the Colts from the pack this year, because this was a year where they could have really done that. They didn't. And now AFC South, I mean, it's up for grabs. I think it really comes down to Titans and Colts. But Jaguars with their coup, what they did, don't be surprised. And I mean, the Texans could come out and do some things too, so you never know.
So my thing on Ballard is, as you were talking and kind of breaking it down, was I think that it was the fact that they were so bad in terms of drafting under Ryan Grigson that once he came in, trades back, gets Quentin Nelson, Darius Leonard second round, it's like, oh my God, it's like every year is going to be like this. If John Robinson had had that success that he had in his first draft, immediately, not over time, but immediately. So say Jack Conklin was an all-pro, Derrick Henry was the best running back in the NFL, and Kevin Byard was an all-pro all that first year, they'd probably be saying the same things about Robinson that they're saying about Ballard. And the more I think about it, this probably was a big year for them to make a move on the free agent market. So I would say I don't think he's as good as Polian yet, but he's certainly better than Grigson, and it may be the comparison to Grigson that people get carried away with.
Yeah, Polian, that, it's really interesting. That's bittersweet for me. He drafted my favorite player ever in Andre Reed, but he had these out of Kutztown State, a fellow PSAC, Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference player. At the same time, he had these idiotic comments about Lamar Jackson. So it's like, I don't know, but I get what you're saying. And you mentioned John Robinson. Honestly, how much better of a job has Chris Ballard done than John Robinson?
I would argue, I think that's a great point, TD. I would argue that Robinson's done a better job because he found the quarterback.
Exactly. And remember, this team, what was their record when Robinson took over?
2-14, 3-13 back-to-back years.
See, that's what you call turning something around. And I give him a lot of credit for that. And obviously, Andrew Luck retiring put a wrench in the game for the Colts. But I think what John Robinson has done is every bit as good as what Chris Ballard has done. And I think they're both pretty good general managers. That's the way I look at it.
TD is with us. Let's get your questions in for TD. 615-737-1025. We're right to them next. Caroline will have them in the text line. 615-737-1025. TD is here with us today, presented by FreedomTireGuys.com, Nashville's premier tire guys. It's the TD Power Hour on Stillman Company, ESPN 1025, The Game. Stillman Company's live from the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation out here at the Grove at Arrington. One of my family members texted me and said, when we're taking questions for TD, ask TD how happy he is that he is done writing tuition checks for one of his daughters and how much he laughs at the fact that perhaps one day Jared will have to be paying a lot more in tuition the way things are going. I'm sure TD will end up with the last laugh on that one on my part.
Yeah, hey, listen, you better stop saying that because I'm going to end up with the Holy Ghost up in here. And I'm going to say hallelujah 100 times in a row. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Like that, That's how relieved I am, man. But guess what? I have another daughter in art college, and I have a 15 and 12-year-old. So the job is not done, and I still have a lot to do. But I will have some temporary excitement because Howard University is no longer getting my checks.
There you go. And you know what? It's better than the alternative, TD. It's always great to have your kids doing so well. TD is presented by FreedomTireGuys.com, Nashville's premier tire company. Let's take our questions like we always do. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kenny the mailman's going to kick us off with TD. Go ahead, Kenny.
Good afternoon. For 2 years, we've seen some of the worst kicking ever in the NFL. This year, there's going to be close games. 2 or 3 of them will be decided by a kick either way. How in the world is the solution signing a free agent kid from Ohio State who has just made one kick over 49 yards? Thank y'all, and y'all have a good day.
Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm looking at his numbers now. He kicked a 55-yarder against Northwestern, and he is 28 of 35 on field goal attempts. Yeah, that's a good point. I can't even begin to explain that one. I guess they better hope that boot matures and he's able to hit one over 50 yards. But they seem to like Tucker McCann. And the whole situation with kickers is just interesting to me because you'll get a really good kicker that just comes out of nowhere. I thought they should have looked at the Miami kicker. Was it Borgalis? I believe that's how you pronounce his name. But I will say this. I know a guy in Charles Barnes University scouting. He's an independent evaluator, and he had the Ohio State kicker as his top-rated kicker coming out. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know enough about the guy from Ohio State to say that he can definitively be the answer.
Yeah, I mean, like when I was in high school, the Titans, were done with Joe Nendy and Gary Anderson, and they signed Ola Kimron to be the kicker, and they brought in Rob Baronis out of the Arena League, and Baronis drilled a 55-yarder in a preseason game and was the kicker for the next decade.
Exactly.
So, to TD's point, I mean, you have no idea where you're going to find the kicker. I will say this, though. I wonder if they're really out of the Gostkowski game for right now, or if it's one of those things where they're going to let the young guys kick, and if they realize on August 17th that the young guys can't kick, they're dialing up Stephen Gostkowski, and Stephen Gostkowski's back to kick.
You never know. That could be the situation, but it was definitely a roller coaster last year, so I'm not sure that they want to ride that one again.
Let's go to the text line. Caroline Fenton on the text line. What's in there for TD?
This is not a question for TD, but there is one texter that texted in and said that you look like a Division III FBI agent. So I just wanted you to know that.
Jared Stillman, FBI. Thank you to all the people, by the way, that watch the show on Periscope and Twitter and Twitch and YouTube. And, I mean, our digital numbers are pretty freaking good. So
We appreciate it.
Thank those people. They're here for TD, though.
Jason eventually, it says, any chance the Titans would move Monty Rice to outside linebacker? Watching his highlights, he seemed to be a good blitzer, and he's fast. Just wondering if anything in his background or playing experience would suggest that as an option.
No, I think it's very unlikely that they would put him at outside linebacker. I think he is best suited, as you mentioned, to be blitzing. And I think when you're blitzing from the interior, what they call spiking those gaps, I think that's something that is probably best for him. So I would say no to that.
TD, though, I don't know if you remember me asking Vrabel this in the press conference, but you've brought this up a lot with me, that in 2018, Jayon Brown was getting after the quarterback. And I did wonder with the Rice pick, Nick Saban told me on Rashaan Evans one time that he's either a middle linebacker or you can move him outside and rush the passer, but he's not going to be a middle linebacker who rushes the passer. Saban said you kind of have to pick one or the other, and he'll be good at both, but you have to pick one or the other when it came to Rashawn. And I wonder if they want those two guys, Brown and Evans, more involved in the rush game than they would want Rice or Long. And I think Vrabel kind of said, hey, the more these guys can do, the more we'll let them. But, right now we don't want to overwhelm them. I wonder if Vrabel plans on handing more responsibility off to Evans and Brown with the addition of Monty Rice.
I think you really need to allow Jayon Brown to have an opportunity to rush the passer. And I'm not talking about coming off the edge, right, putting his hand in the dirt and doing that. I'm talking about allowing him to blitz and using him on those type of situations. He had 6 sacks in 2018. And in the article I wrote about him, you remember that Colts game, he single-handedly took that game over. And I think when you allow a guy like that to just play ball and work to his best ability, I think that's what you get. And he was one of the best linebackers in football in 2018. He was pretty solid in 2019. Now, last year he was doing solid, had some issues with coverage, right? But then, he got hurt. I think really if you allow this guy to do what he does best, which includes rushing the passer, I think you're going to get the best results.
Floyd always used to tell me, I'm sorry if I cut you off there, TD, but Floyd used to always tell me that some of these guys have big play in them and some of these guys don't.
That's exactly.
And
exactly.
Jayon's got a little – I go back to that Bengals game. I thought it was the worst call of the season against the Titans.
The interference. Yeah.
Yes. There was a pass interference or a defensive hold that I thought looked, was very ticky-tack on a humongous potential game-changing interception where Jayon Brown high-pointed the football as a linebacker and came down with it and would have set the ball, probably the Titans up inside the Cincinnati 30.
Yep.
And if the Titans score there, it is a ball game and a half, and they ended up calling it back. To your point, TD, I think Jayon has got – now, health is an issue because it was the shoulder in 2019 and then obviously that dirty hit on the elbow last year. But Jayon's got some big play in him, both sacking and, pass coverage, and I wouldn't discredit that if putting Monty Rice on the field allows Jayon to kind of do a little bit more.
I honestly don't think having Rashaan Evans on the field won't allow him to do more, honestly. I think it really comes down to the scheme and what you're asking him to do as a coach, as a coordinator. That's really where it is, in my opinion.
What do we have, Caroline?
Kenston texted in and said, would it be foolish to say that Anthony Firkser and Josh Reynolds are the key to the offense this year?
I don't think it would be it's not foolish to say that. I think it's sneaky to say that. First and foremost, that offense, I don't care what you say, 22, that's the engine, right? And then after that, 17 and then 11. Those are the key parts of the vehicle. Now, if Josh Reynolds is able to play the way that he's talking, I think that will really help. And Firkser, obviously, as the primary tight end, pass-catching-wise, is going to help too. But don't get away from where it all starts, and that's with Derrick Henry.
For me, TD, I think it's that interior offensive line. Can Saffold stay healthy, and can Nate Davis take the next step, from – really good to potential all-pro this upcoming season. And I think if you get those guys with the return of Taylor Lewan, that mauling run game, and the Titans still had a good run game last year, but I never felt like it was mauling like it was in 2019 in that stretch run. Like Derrick Henry would run for an 80-yard touchdown run, or he'd have, 170 yards, but he didn't feel like he just killed people like he did in 2019. I look at those guys and say, hey, if you can get those guys to recreate what they did in that stretch run, then I think it will make things easier for the Reynolds and the Firksers and the Batsons and the Des Fitzpatricks going forward.
Yeah, the offensive line goes without saying. That's just like, it all starts there. So, I think when we're talking in these types of conversations, it's more or less focusing on what skill players will have the biggest impact.
Sure.
Tommy texted in and said, is there a chance we didn't draft a wide receiver high because of the opportunity of getting Julio if Tannehill renegotiated his contract and Lewan if need be?
I don't have a clue. I don't think it was a matter of that, honestly. I think it was more a matter of getting the players that they liked. I know for a fact that they loved Caleb Farley, and there was one point where that guy just didn't seem like it was a possibility, and that possibility is put in front of your lap, and now you're like, yeah, I'm going to go this route. So I think that's really the way that whole thing played out. It was more a matter of the way the board dropped for them.
I feel like in life, sometimes you fall in love with things you just know you can't have.
Yeah.
That's why, like, sometimes people get promotions or they get new jobs, and it's like, that car I always wanted, I can now buy. And I had a source tell me in February, before Jeffrey Simmons got hurt of 19, that said the Titans are going to take Jeffrey Simmons if he's there. I'm like, what? I'm like, he's not going to be there. Like, what are you talking about?
Top
and then
10 player.
Simmons tears the knee, and then next thing, you know, we kind of forget about him a little bit, and we're sitting up there on the draft stage, and all of a sudden they take Jeffrey Simmons, and I texted that source, and I'm like, how did you know? How did you know? You know, how did you? And so I think Farley was probably similar, the way TD was saying it, that they probably looked at it and said, no way, no how. And I will say this, and I'm not accusing the Titans of anything here, TD. I wonder if, you know, all that medical information that was given to Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport before the draft, I wonder if that was given to them by the Tennessee Titans because, you know, when we had Stephania Bell on, thanks to TD, we had Stephania Bell on Friday. She, I don't want to say, you know, shrugged it off, but she kind of was like, no, you know, a lot of guys, 85%, 90% of guys have this back surgery and come back. But when you hear, you know, the S1 disc and the R5 disc and the L2 disc, and it's like, that sounds bad. And I wonder if the Titans might have been the ones to let Rappaport and Tom Pelissero know about that. But I'm not accusing them of anything, Turron.
Caroline, we got time for another. I know the people want to talk, man.
That is true. I've been talking way too much.
Yeah, of course. Ben texted in and said, how much money do the Titans legit have now? The smoke and mirror stuff is exhausting. Can we still improve this team, or are the Titans stuck losing the first or second playoff game again this season?
That remains to be seen because you still have the draft picks that have to be signed. So once all of that is settled, then you could get an actual number. But you do always have that well that you could go to as far as being able to renegotiate and kick some money down the line.
We got one more for TD?
One more, and now that you brought it up, how concerned are you, TD, about Farley's back surgery?
I am a lot less concerned than I was, just based off of, you know, hearing Stephania Bell explain it. I talked to Nate Washington about it yesterday too, and he didn't have the same injury, but he had a similar one to where there was a bone, one of the discs, it grew spurs, and it was kind of pushing on the nerve. And the whole thing that I think, you know, really had me hesitant was just whether or not he's going to have that twitchiness again. And that's not really something we're going to find out until if he's there for rookie minicamp as far as on the field. If not, OTAs and those type of things, that's when you'll start to see him move, and you can kind of get a gauge that way. So right now, no, a lot less concerned.
TD, go spend some time with the family this week. Celebrate it up. Congratulations to you and your family. As always, again, the TD Power Hour. It's everybody's favorite time of the week.
Appreciate
TD, congratulations again, man.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate you both.
Yeah,
and you, Ian.
Turron is presented by FreedomTireGuys.com, Nashville's premier mobile tire company. There we go. Coming up next, I got some questions for Caroline and Ian on the Titans and whether or not we're feeling how we feel about all of that. We'll get into all of that coming up. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. It's Stillman Company, ESPN 1025 The Game, and we are streaming on the Game Nashville app. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game. Caroline Fenton is here. We are live from the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation. Again, that'll be going on, I believe, all weekend. The Grove in Arrington, which is where we are. Ian's back in our wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's, I hate when I get dragged into doing something that I get on other people for doing. So the draft happens. And then, look, there were a lot of people. We talked on Tuesday of last week, and we kicked it around, the three of us, Ian, Caroline, myself, and we said, okay, we have this information on Caleb Farley, and after what Tom Pelissero, Ian Rappaport, what those guys reported, are we in or are we out on Farley? And we all voted no on Caleb Farley. We got scared by S1 vertebrae and L5 disc, and we get all of it. And we're like, no, out, see ya. Chris Sanders came on Wednesday and said, I had the same injury. No. And I was out. Then they pick him, and I was against it. And by the way, for the record, I'm still against it. But I was against it. And then all of a sudden, the same Titan fans that texted the show and were against it and called the show on Friday, they were texting the show saying we were haters. Saying, like, how can we do this? We should be, yes, Caleb Farley, way to go, and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't know, I still don't. Then Ian sent me Caleb Farley a month ago on the Chris Collinsworth podcast, and I was listening to him talk about, his motivation and his energy and everything else, and he was all fired up, and I was just like, yeah, maybe I'm buying this a little bit. Or on Saturday, I love the Des Fitzpatrick pick. A buddy of mine on the radio in Louisville told me he'd be a great slot receiver. And then Trevor Maddich comes on, says he's not going to be a great slot receiver. TD comes on and says doesn't see him as a slot guy. Chris Sanders doesn't see him as a slot guy. And I'm starting to look at myself and I'm thinking, oh no, do I hate the Des Fitzpatrick pick now? And I'm like, Jared, you get mad at other people when a pick is made and they don't like the pick. And then 3 days later, they're like, I love the pick. You can't change. So I guess I'm, kind of staying straight, though.
Did you get fooled by that Caleb Farley, Chris Collinsworth interview?
No. But I heard it, and I listened to him talk, and I was like, okay, hey, I hear Caleb Farley talking on this interview, and I'm like, he seems all fired up. But again, everybody has a good interview, and everybody interviews.
I don't think
or else they
anyone
wouldn't interview you.
And nobody ever questioned his motivation or his drive. Like, that
Sure.
very much so came through in the interview. He was like, I'm a perfectionist. I will do whatever it takes. I'm going to be in the weight room. I'm going to be studying film. Like, very much so I believe him. But when it came to Chris Collinsworth asking him about, can you run? Can you play? He was like, oh, yeah, I would run, but I can't.
So I have taken the best questions, in my opinion, the most important aspects of the Titans after the draft, the questions. And we're going to play a little buy or sell. Caroline, Ian, we're all going to get a vote here to buy or to sell. And again, I think these are the most important questions surrounding the team. So we start with the number one question I have right now. And we will buy or we will sell. We ready?
Ready.
Okay. The Titans are set in the secondary with Caleb Farley, Janoris Jenkins, Christian Fulton, and Elijah Molden. They are done. They will have a good secondary. No need to add. No need to trade. No need to pick up a release guy. They're good. Finito. Done. Buy or sell.
Sell. Absolutely not.
Why?
Caleb Farley, we don't even know if he can run. We don't know if he can play. We don't know how healthy he is. Elijah Molden was very much so a bargain pickup for the Titans. People enjoyed that pick. I don't not trust him. Christian Fulton, we haven't seen much from him. And Janoris Jenkins, he has never played a snap with the Titans. So, no, I am not completely sold on this secondary. I think there's just too many question marks. And there's not one guy in that list that you're like, oh, yeah, we're happy to have that veteran back on the Titans. No.
I so disagree. I feel like Janoris Jenkins is sign him. He's going to go man with somebody. He'll be fine. He'll get burned, occasionally during the season. He'll make some great plays during the season. Every corner does.
He's never played a game with the Titans.
So he's got like a 15. He's played in the NFL for 10 years.
I know. But if you're going to say, oh, we don't need anyone else, I mean, that's just a whole lot of question marks right there. I mean, yeah, Janoris Jenkins is a league veteran. He's a proven
He's
cornerback.
a really good. I mean, he's had a great
I know
career.
he is. He played on my team. I know how great he is.
So why would you be worried about that?
I mean, if you just have Janoris Jenkins, like, yes, he's a proven NFL veteran corner, but he's not a proven NFL veteran Titan.
Okay, then by that, I guess by that, then you could look at anybody that signs with any team and say, that guy's not proven. That guy's not proven on that team. So Tom Brady last year, not a proven Buccaneer. Now he's a proven Buccaneer. You can't, come on.
But I'm not going to say that I'm buying that just because Janoris Jenkins, when there's a cornerback in there that may or may not be broken, there's a third-round cornerback in there, and then Christian Fulton, who played, 3 games last year with the Titans?
Handful of games.
Yeah.
Ian, you buying or selling it?
Well, I think if the Farley injury turns out to be okay, I'm a soft buy.
That's fair.
If he can, kind of recover and get out there for training camp, I think they have some talent, and I think they have some young talent that can continue to get better. One thing I do worry about is that we heard a lot about last year, and I think somebody brought this up to Vrabel or J-Rob during one of these press conferences, is the chemistry and the communication with a whole new secondary, sure. Pretty much with other than Byard and Amani Hooker. You got virtually all new starting corners, and secondary and communication was already an issue last year. I think that's something they're really going to have to work on.
So I think their plan is to play man coverage on every snap, and then that way it's just you got Johnny, you got Steve, you got. But I hear you. I'm buying it. Here's why I'm buying it. My expectations have been lowered because I've seen Tremaine Brock Sr. line up at corner in the AFC Championship game for the Titans. So I know how bad it can get. Last year, the first game of the year, they had Malcolm Butler and Chris Jackson. And I would not forget, by the way, about Chris Jackson. I feel comfortable that Janoris Jenkins will be on one outside spot, and then I feel comfortable that either Farley or Fulton will be at the other outside spot. And if Farley's hurt, then Elijah Molden plays the nickel. If not, then Fulton goes to nickel. Farley's outside. Jenkins, you got Molden when you go dime, plus Kevin Johnson, who they signed as a free agent, though I think he sucks because he's a Vrabel guy, and you know how I feel about Vrabel guys. And then they've got Chris Jackson that they can put in there. They still have Amani Hooker out there at safety, Kevin Byard, Dane Cruikshank returns from injury. I think of all the things, there are a lot of things I don't like about the Titans. They don't have a tight end. Slot receiver, I don't know. Secondary is done. They've got enough there. Done. So I'm the only one, I guess I'm buying that one. Second one, Dez Fitzpatrick will be the starting slot wide receiver for the Titans week 1. Buy or sell? Ian.
I'm going to go sell. I know you have heard that he is a good slot receiver, and he very well could be a good slot receiver. But as a rookie coming in, I don't think you can trust him to be a starter at the slot position, to have to know all that goes into that position as a rookie. So I'm going to sell.
Caroline?
I'm going to buy it only because who else do the Titans have to play in that slot position? I agree with you, Ian, that if the Titans had another guy on the roster that who has already played and gets this offensive scheme, that he would probably sit on the bench. But the Titans just don't have any bodies in the slot position, so I'm going to sell that. Or I'm going to buy that, I'm sorry.
So I want to buy it, and I do think he should be the starting slot receiver for the Titans. I'm going to sell it, and here's why I'm going to sell it. Because Mike Vrabel, when he falls in love with a player, John Robinson has to take that player off the team, or else he's going to do something stupid like give the ball to David Fluellen over Derrick Henry. And I think Mike Vrabel loves Cameron Batson. I think he loves Cam Batson. And I think wide receiver is a hard position to learn right away in the NFL. Dez Fitzpatrick played for 2 offensive coaches in Bobby Petrino and Scott Satterfield, and so maybe that will ease kind of the learning process. But I think the first chance Vrabel gets to go put Batson in the slot, he's going to do it. He loves Cam Batson. And as I said, if Vrabel loves a guy, that guy will find his way onto the football field. Sometimes it works. Jayon Brown, Amani Hooker, Vrabel loved those guys. Sometimes it doesn't, and I think Vrabel loves Cam Batson. I do, and because of that, and I hate it because I don't think Cam Batson's that good, but I think Cam Batson's going to start at slot for the Titans, even though I'm not sure he really should. So as much as I'd like to say buy, I'm going to sell. The Titans will trade for a tight end, or they will pick one up in free agency, buy or sell.
I'm buying that. You're going to have just Anthony Ferkser out there. I think that they intentionally, or maybe it was intentional or not, just how the board fell, but they didn't pick up a tight end in the draft, and I felt like they needed to. Sure. So, yes, I am buying that they are either going to trade. I feel better about picking up a tight end in free agency just because I don't know how much the Titans really have to trade, but I am buying that they will either trade or pick up a tight end.
Ian?
I'm also buying. They do need some more numbers, although I do think they really like Jeff Swaim. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's more involved than we anticipate. I'm kind of surprised they haven't brought back Michael Pruitt. But, as TD mentioned, there could be some last hour. There could be some options here during these veteran cuts.
So I'm going to buy this as well. And I do want to qualify this by when I say they're going to get a tight end, I'm talking about a starting tight end. Bringing in Michael Pruitt back and then having Ferkser be the guy, that certainly could be a position they go. I'm not sure it is. I think they're waiting. I think tight end is the one position where I feel like they are waiting for June 1st. And they have a feeling that 3 or 4 guys are going to get canned and one guy's going to be out there for them to sign, and that's what they're going to do. TD, Zach Ertz earlier today, I buy the idea they're getting a tight end. I mean, they are not done at tight end. I think they wanted Hunter Long. I think they wanted Tommy Tremble. They both fell off the board before the Titans picked at 85. The Titans quickly got out of the pick and gave it to Green Bay. And I would love to know the timeline on when they gave it to Green Bay, because I remember looking up the pick before the Titans picked at 85. That pick was still on the clock, and we saw Green Bay at 85 next to whoever was picking. I think it was Dallas was picking, and we saw Green Bay up next. So we knew the Titans traded it before 84. And I wonder if it was because Trimble fell off the board. But, yes, I think they will get a tight end. Last one, buy or sell. Bud Dupree and Harold Landry and maybe Rashad Weaver, who knows, are enough for the Titans this season at outside linebacker. And, yeah, they'll have all the other guys, the Derek Robersons and the Tazar Skippers and the practice squad level guys. But that Landry, Dupree, and Weaver are enough.
So, just with all of the question marks surrounding Rashad Weaver, I still don't think that's enough. I mean, I was really big on the Titans taking a pass rusher in the first round, and at least in the second or third round, just picking up a pass rusher, because I did not think that Bud Dupree and Harold Landry were enough, especially because of Bud Dupree's injury. So I am selling that Bud Dupree and Harold Landry are enough for the Titans at outside linebacker.
Ian?
Selling as well. They've been using Landry, and their rotation is just so light as it was last year. This Weaver situation is obviously less than ideal, and I think Autry will help, but he's not really necessarily an outside backer. Sure. So I'm going to sell as well.
You know what really bothers me is I feel like we think it's a bigger deal than they think it is. Like
Rashad
think
Weaver?
No, the outside linebacker position.
Okay.
Like, I don't think Harold Landry can play every snap. I think they think he can.
They brought that up, and they still continued to do it.
Oh, they said last year, oh, yeah, we got to take back Harold's snap count because we want Harold to go get the quarterback. Harold Landry, 73 possible defensive snaps. Harold Landry played 72. I mean, it's like, guys. So it's like, I don't even think they think it's an issue. So I'm going to say sell, I'm going to say sell. It's not enough. It's not enough. What they have right now, Bud Dupree coming off of an injury, it's not enough. But knowing that the three of us think this, and I don't feel like they think it. I think they look at it and they think, like they say to themselves, oh, yeah, no, we're good. Bud Dupree, Harold Landry, Weaver, if that gets worked out okay, like that's how I think they feel on it. But it gets me worked up thinking about it. That's buy or sell. I like that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your thoughts on the Titans in the draft, and plus why John Robinson hasn't played a card yet that he definitely can play. And I think he told us he's going to play it. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman Company, we're live from the wholesaling studio powered by RumbleOn.com at the Simmons Bank Open, which benefits the Snedeker Foundation, right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Let me tell all the fine folks out there that this Friday, May 7th, tomorrow, has been declared Nashville Predators Pride Day throughout Tennessee. We invite you to cheer on the Predators by wearing gold and throughout the day. The Preds will highlight their amazing fans supporting their favorite Preds gear. Take a pic, post it on your social media page, and be sure to tag Preds NHL to show your support for the Preds and wear gold this Friday. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman Company, we are delivered by TriStar Moving. We're live at the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation. Let me tell the fine folks, Nashville Sounds Baseball. Listen, ESPN 94.9 for Nashville Sounds Baseball, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans and 312 Pizza Company. The Sounds take on the Mud Hens, 5:35. So I asked John Robinson a question on Saturday. And it'd be nice if we had it, but we don't. But I asked John Robinson a question on Saturday about restructuring contracts, because they have not restructured Ryan Tannehill's contract. And everyone kept wondering in free agency if they were going to reconstruct or, if they were going to kind of restructure his deal and free up cap space. And Robinson, in a long-winded explanation, I feel like basically said yes. So we're talking about all the needs of the team. June 1st is coming up where teams can cut a guy and take half the cap hit this year, half the cap hit next year. Do you think Robinson, and I think Robinson, is holding back? I think he's holding back on a Tannehill restructure for that. And I think it's to the point where he doesn't want to commit any more money than he has to commit as far as Tannehill's concerned. And for Tannehill, it's just kind of more of a restructure. Lewan, it's legitimately guaranteeing next season. And I don't think he wants to do that. So I think he's waiting to see, okay, is somebody going to get released that I want to go pick up? And if they get released, for him to go pick that person up, then I think that that's what he's going to want to do. So I still think he's holding back. I think there is one card to play. And we kind of touched on this with TD, and we kind of talked about it. And I want to be down on the Titans too. I mean, I want to look at this draft, and I want to see no tight end and say, how can you play without a tight end? And I want to bang on the table every day and say, how can you not have a starting tight end? Because they don't have a starting tight end right now.
Yet.
And I want to do that, but I think he's holding back. I think that's a card that he wants to play. Or I don't think he wants to play. I think it's a card he's going to play. I think he's just waiting to see who ends up out there after June 1st before they make the move. Because everybody's telling me Des Fitzpatrick can't play the slot. Everybody's, I know Anthony Ferkser's not a starting tight end in the NFL. I think he's waiting on that. Now, maybe the Weaver news complicates this because maybe they thought that was the depth guy that could play outside backer to go with Landry and Dupree, and now maybe they have to go look for one of those too, and maybe they can't create enough money doing it. But I would say I think Robinson is holding back. I think he is holding back right now on wanting to restructure those deals, knowing that they can possibly come down the road. What's in the text line? 615-737-1025 is our phone number. The phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
Ryan said, I would love to see the Titans sign Justin Houston as a post June 1st signing. What are your thoughts on that defensive end?
So I think Justin Houston is a free agent right now. So he doesn't necessarily matter in terms of the post June 1st. When they talk about cutting a guy and half of the money being this year, half of the money being next year, that's because when you cut a guy with salary cap with signing bonus, it accelerates into the year that's upcoming. So, for example, if the Titans, I think they gave Tannehill a $20 million signing bonus. So it was over 4 years, so that's $5 million each year. If they were to cut Tannehill today, then all that money for next year and the year after, that $10 million with the $5 million they already owe this year, comes into this year, and now they owe $15 million against the cap, plus whatever was guaranteed to have been paid out. So if you do it, then you can split that money in half if you wait till June 1st, and again, using Tannehill and that $15 million. So $7.5 million would be this year, and $7.5 million would be next year, and then they could, save a little bit of money. But signing a guy like Justin Houston, that's not a June 1st move. He's already a free agent. He's already out there. So it's guys like TD brought up Zach Ertz. It's guys like that I think will be out there that teams will take the hit this year and next year on, and then the Titans can go out and sign those guys. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. AJ is up next here on Stillman Company. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, AJ.
What's going on? How y'all doing?
Good.
First of all, with the Titans, with the draft, I'm kind of like some folks. I was kind of iffy. Who knows how some of the people may turn out. But far more when it came to free agents and stuff and keeping some of their own players, I think the Titans lost a lot of depth, and I just want to see what they'll do to regain that depth. Not only on defense, but just like the little depth they had on offense to back each other up. And I just want to sit back and listen to what y'all say.
Thank you, AJ. I think this is one of those things where the Titans are in a tough spot. Like a lot of teams in the league, the cap money that they were expecting to have, they simply don't have. And that's where that depth, I look at the depth on defense more than I do anything else. They have depth at tackle right now. They have depth at running back. They have depth guys at wide receiver. At wide receiver, they just don't have, tight end. They just don't have starter at tight end. I'm not sure depth. I mean, I think it's something that the entire league is probably going through this year. Crispy is going to join us next. A tough one for the Predators. Win against a bad Columbus team, and they were in, and they couldn't do it. What did Crispy think about that? Terry Crisp will join us next. Stillman Company. We're live from the Simmons Bank Open to benefit the Snedeker Foundation, presented by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Win, and you were in last night against the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Preds had a 1-0 lead. They had a 2-1 lead. They lost 4-2, although in all seriousness, it was really a one-goal game, and the Predators brought the fire and the energy at the end of the game. How much did they bring it for the whole game? That's a debatable question given the stakes. Terry Crisp joins us now in the program, though. Crispy, I want you to put me in your coach's shoes right now. You watched that effort last night. With the stakes being what they were, how did you feel? I know they brought it at the end of the game last night, couldn't get the goal to fall, but how did you feel about the effort level given the stakes last night?
You know what, Stiller? I was sitting talking with Hal Gill after the game. He and I and Mace were sitting talking about it, and we were sort of comparing notes as to what we saw and liked and didn't like, et cetera. And to a man, we all agreed that three of us were disappointed in the emotion, the energy, the sense of urgency that wasn't displayed for the full 60 minutes by our hockey club. We had the one unit out there, the herd, Jeannot and Sissons and Trennan, that every time on the ice, they were just flying. They were pushing, burying, going in. And after that, there was a drop-off, and we couldn't figure out why, because the guys had all been fighting so far to get here and digging in to get here for that game and to make it all happen. And in the second period, we had I don't know how many breakaways, point-blank scoring chances that we didn't get. So that's always my one bugbear is we didn't finish. We had chances, did not finish them for whatever reason. Now, I know they don't mean not to score, but when the stakes are this high, you got to find a way to put that puck in the net. You got to find a way that when you get there and you're open, I'm putting it in the net, not around it, not over it, not into the goalie's guts. And I give Merzlikins credits. He played well. But, again, I don't know. I guess be like Coach Hines and them. Hey, we're still in the hunt. We still got to win. We still got to get into the playoffs. So let's learn from that game.
Crispy, how much do you worry about this team last night? You know, they can't get it done. Dallas loses. They would have won and they clinch. And now you get Carolina. And I, you know, all due respect to Tampa Bay, defending Cup champions, and they're going to get a lot of firepower back for the playoffs. I don't know if anybody's playing better in the sport right now than Carolina. I'll say this, if Tampa Bay doesn't take care of Dallas tomorrow night, I'm worried. Should we be worried?
Yeah, we should be if you're common sense. The only reason we should worry is if we don't give our best. Now, if we come out, and even our best is going to be after our top best, because we've seen what Carolina can do. We've played them having, you know, we took them to the edge a couple times. I still consider them one of the top teams in NHL, top 2 or 3. In our division, they're the best, in my mind. Right from top to bottom, goaltending, defense, forwards, right on out. And their coach, Rod Brindamere, he has them flying out there. So, yeah, they are. So we know full well that if we're going to take a game from these guys or two or whatever points we want to sneak out of them or take away from them, we've got to have an effort. And then that can't just be a one-line effort or a one-and-a-half-line effort and a couple of defensemen and our goaltender playing out of the skull for us. I don't care if you get 27 minutes in the game, if you get 19 minutes in the game, or if you get 8 minutes in the game. I want a full 27, I want a full 19, and I want a full 8 from whoever going over those boards. And let it be. Then the results will be what they will be. But if we give that, then that's as good as we can be.
Terry Crisp is our guest here on the program. What did you think of Hines benching Matt Duchene last night? He was asked about it after the game, said he just wanted to play Philip Forsberg a little bit more. There are a lot of people that looked at the second goal and feel like Duchene's effort at blocking that shot wasn't good enough, and that's what got him sat down on the bench. I worry, Crispy. I mean, I think Matt Duchene's been playing some of his best hockey with the Predators. What did you make of that situation last night?
You know what? I don't think it's just that one incident. The Coach Hines is smarter than that, and he's better than that. I know him. And he'd probably seen other things that he wanted to change, he didn't like. And as a coach, I applaud double-shifting Forsberg. He's our one to go to. Forsberg's your double shift the herd if you have to in that stretch. Sit other guys out, whatever you want to call it, and sit them. And the guys know. And the guys, when I played, your job when you're sitting there is to cheer. You cheer loud for the guys and to pep them up and keep them going. That's what the rest of your job is that given night. And again, having been a coach, you make decisions and you live with them and you go with them. And when he started double shifting Forsberg, I was happy. I said, good, smart move. That was to get one of our best players out there. He's fresh. He's got new legs. Let him go.
Crispy, the thing that bothers me about that, though, is that I do feel like, and I'm not saying that Matt Duchene was playing well last night. He has played well up until last night. But what bothers me is that I don't think you can beat Carolina in the playoffs or Tampa Bay in the playoffs if you don't have Matt Duchene playing well. And maybe, hey, this is the jolt that Matt Duchene needs. I don't know. I don't think you can bench the same guy over and over again. And we know Hines benched him last year. But I think they have to have him. I think this is one of those things that, hey, if Duchene doesn't play well, you lose. So you better figure out how to get him to play well.
Stiller, that's a dumb statement to make, because if Duchene doesn't play, doesn't mean we lose. We won without him. When he was injured, our team was flying. When he was injured, we were winning. Now you're going to say, well, this team is different. We're against Carolina now. You're not against them. You'd be right in that vein, except that we got our best effort from the guys that were playing back then, and we were winning and knocking teams and going tough and hard. So I don't see any change in that. If Duchene's in the lineup, yeah, if he's playing his game as good as his skill level is, and if he's scoring goals, he's here to score goals. That's his job. And that's why he was brought in here, was to be a goal scorer, same with a couple other guys and whatnot. So playing hard or playing whatever isn't as good enough anymore for the guys. Like the Herd, they do their job night in, night out, and now they're scoring goals. So I'm giving nobody a pass on that. Nobody on a pass of not giving the energy and what you brought here for to do.
Crispy, how much – I think we're all going to be watching tomorrow night to see Dallas and see what happens with that. Let's say Dallas wins tomorrow night and Saturday and Monday become big. How much will you judge this team off of the effort level? Not necessarily the result, because as we said, Carolina's pretty good. How much will you judge this team on the effort level they give Saturday and Monday?
Full-hearted. If I leave the rink and I leave my booth or whatever, and if I, in my heart, as an old player and an old coach, I say, you know what? Those guys guts it out. They give every last ounce they had. And I mean the guys, the 9-minute guys, the 4-minute guys, the power play, the penalty kill. I can live with it. Now we're going to reevaluate this team no matter what, whether we make the playoffs or we don't. And we should make the playoffs. These guys, they've come this far. But if we don't, and it happens, you touch wood, that it's not going to be just evaluated on that. It's going to be evaluated on what's happened throughout the season, with injuries coming in, with the young kids that have suddenly jumped up. It's going to mean a lot of reevaluation as to who stays and who doesn't. Yeah, they will, but it'll be on the year, not these two games.
Crispy, I was watching TV this morning. I watch ESPN every morning, probably like a lot of people. And the number one thing they led off with was the fight in New York or Washington or wherever it was, the Capitals-Rangers fight and at Madison Square Garden last night. And a lot of people are saying, yeah, that's the old school hockey. I'm going to say this. I think that's bad for the game. I mean, not to say like that fighting's bad for the game or anything like that. I think it's bad for the game to have the theme of an entire game. ESPN morning show, number one topic was that game, and they didn't even mention TJ Oshie's hat trick after his dad had passed away because they were so hell-bent on the fighting and the drama and the statement that the Rangers put out, and I think it's bad for the game. What did you think of all of that?
I think you're right there in the pot stirring it. I think you're as good as any of the guys in TSN, ESPN, OSPN, or whatever. Stiller, did you ever listen to yourself? We listen to you sometimes just to see who you're going to tear apart. Who are you going to give it to? Who are you going to ream on this time along or whatever? So you can't tell me that the physicality in any sport, football, some guys knocking guys around, or hot. And you know what? We've got a funny sense of humor in our society today. But what draws the biggest crowds now that sells out every arena across the country, North America? When two men win that cage, what's it called?
Oh, the UFC?
Yeah, what is that? Yeah,
the Octagon?
That they sell their TV ratings are unbeatable, the money that. Why do people look at it? Why? Same thing in
I think
sports.
they want to see like a shin bone come out of somebody's, lower leg.
Stiller, I love you, guy, but you are still one of the guys that stirs the pot.
Well, but I said this earlier today. If you're
why do you do it? Why do you do it?
Why do I tell it like it is? Because somebody's got to tell it. Somebody's got to tell it like it is, Crispy.
That's what I'm saying. You want people to listen to you, and you tell it like it is. So if they like you or don't like you, that's not your problem. You're telling how you feel, what's going and what's happening, what's going down, and that's why a lot of people listen to you.
Well, I'm not saying.
Pro or con. You remember Don Cherry?
Oh, I remember Don Cherry.
Well, and in Canada, he is an icon forever and a day. And 50% loved him, and 50% disliked him. But they listened to him. All 100% listened to him.
I think Don Cherry got canceled. I could be wrong.
He did.
I could.
But he
okay,
survived.
so I don't want that.
He did, by the way. But that didn't diminish what he is up there.
Terry Crisp, as always. I would just say this, Crispy. if we were
guy.
watching a baseball game, this is baseball. First pitch of the game, we got the first baseman, running after the first base coach trying to punch each other, and then you got baseball would suspend both coaches, and they would say this cannot happen in baseball. All the Rangers want is for Tom Wilson, who is about a 5,000 time offender. They just want him to be punished, and I get it. I understand where the Rangers are coming from and their whole, hey, we're going to take it into our own hands. I just think it's bad for the game to have just people fighting off the jump because the league didn't do what they were supposed to do in suspending him. That's all I'm saying.
And you know what? The one thing you do learn from all this, Stiller, is that make sure you keep your yap shut and don't say the wrong thing at the wrong time, because it could cost you $250,000.
Yeah, that is true. Don't be calling people out, which, again, that's another problem that apparently I have. Terry Crisp, as always. Crispy, we appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
Stay with us, Stiller. 2 games, we're going to make it, buddy.
Oh, I actually agree. I think the Predators will make the playoffs. Terry Crisp, as always, Bally Sports. He will be on Saturday and Monday. And then, of course, when the playoffs get started, we'll have Crispy on all of that, too. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I think a lot of people are going to want to react to what Crispy just had to say. We're going to react. Crispy was a little feisty there, Ian. I was,
Yes, he was.
We've had Crispy on the show now every Thursday during the hockey season for 5 years. 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 6 years that we've had Crispy on the show. And that may be the most fired up Crispy has been. So we'll touch on that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Their logo is right there on the ice. That's right. It is fantastic how you could just see that Hiller logo for the home games. And on the road games, you can see it on the glass superimposed, because that's how big of a proud sponsor Hiller is of the Nashville Predators. They're also a humongous sponsor of the Tennessee Volunteers. And they are a huge supporter for tax credits. That's right. Tax credits for energy-efficient home systems are back this year. When you put Energy Star certified equipment in your home, you'll earn a tax credit with the IRS. This month, Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical is helping you keep more money in your pocket and doubling your tax credit when you purchase select new HVAC systems or tankless water heaters. And they're offering special financing so you make no payments until next year. Visit happyhiller.com for all of the details. As always, happy you will be, or the service is free. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. My guys, call the Happy Face truck today.
Hi, John. Matt Duchene had some pretty limited minutes tonight, it seemed. Was there a thing with matchups with him or something more you want to see out of his game? Because it's just pretty limited for him compared to probably what we typically see.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I thought Forsberg was playing really well, and I think tonight that was just really how the game went.
That was John Hines last night on benching Matt Duchene. Terry Crisp was just on our show. And Crispy, when I say, look, I think you're going to need Matt Duchene to beat Carolina. Sorry. Crispy said that was an idiotic statement.
Whoa.
Was what Terry Crisp said. He backs John Hines.
Spicy.
He backs John Hines' decision to bench Matt Duchene. Again, Duchene played last night. 11 minutes of ice time. Meanwhile, Eric Holla and Callie Yarncroke played 17. He was on the ice. My goodness. He was on the ice literally as much as Brad Richardson. 13 shifts last night for Matt Duchene. That a team low. So clearly he got benched. Crispy stands with Hines. John Hines was on with Robbie and Rexroad this morning and kind of went further into that decision. Here's what he said.
With that, no, it was just, kind of the way the game went in the third period. It just changed a couple lines, got a couple guys different shifts, and that's how it went last night.
Okay, so the exact same thing that he said last night in reference to this. Are you with Crispy that was the right thing to do? Or do you think that if this team's going to win, they need Matt Duchene, and Matt Duchene needs to be out there on the ice, and they're going to have to play through. If they think it's an effort issue, they're going to have to play through it. Because I don't know if people know this, but when you sign a guy to an $8 million contract and you can't get rid of him, as Adam Vingan has said, he doesn't see an answer for how they get out of the Matt Duchene issue. What are you going to do?
I'm kind of with Crispy on this one. This team was able to win without Matt Duchene, and they can continue to win without Matt Duchene. Are you going to play him just because he's making $8 million? Just because you're paying him a lot of money? Like, I'm with you that I think this team is in a better position when Matt Duchene is healthy and can play. I think that Matt Duchene has played some really good hockey over the past couple of weeks. But if he wasn't doing what John Hines wanted him to do last night, then you're going to sit on the bench. And this team can win games without him. They didn't last night.
Oh, I think that is so short-sighted.
Why?
Oh my God! Because you have to think big picture with this guy. You can't. You're not going to be able to trade him, right?
Right.
Okay. Seattle's not taking him,
Correct.
and you can't buy him out.
Correct.
So he's on your team, right?
Yeah, he's on
So
your
he
team.
has more job security on your team than John Hines does as the coach. Fair?
Essentially.
I mean, again, coaches get fired before players get fired. So he's on the team. Remember Kyle Turris, everybody? Remember how, I'm not going to say Kyle Turris tanked the locker room, but there is a sentiment that I have gotten that the Laviolette-Turris riff, that riff was much deeper than just, it made Kyle Turris not play better. And Kyle Turris, they bought out this past year. Remember, Kyle Turris played a lot better when John Hines became the coach, and I think everybody pretty much knows he and Laviolette really didn't get along. Well, this is bigger than Kyle Turris. This is Matt Duchene, who has a bigger contract, a more immovable contract, if that was even a thing. The truth of the matter with the Predators is this, and this is where I disagree with Crispy, and I disagree with you. And that is, we can look at this and say, hey, they're better off without Matt Duchene. That's fine. But you're not going to get rid of Matt Duchene. So Matt Duchene's going to be here. This is a not just this year, but next year. If you're going to win, when he signs on the dotted line for 7 years and $56 million, when he signs on that dotted line, you are committed. And the idea that you can bench him and you can throw him under the bus, and I do think Hines did a good job of not throwing him under the bus last night, because that could have made things a lot worse. But, I would just say that if Matt Duchene starts becoming, if there's some resentment there after how he feels he's been treated, whether or not it's fair, if there's some resentment, you don't have an option, and it might tank your locker room. And I'm worried about that because, again, Matt Duchene is not a 3-game discussion. It's not a 3-game issue. It's not he wasn't playing well today, let's take him out kind of thing. It's like benching Ryan Tannehill. You can't do it. You can't. Tannehill has a bad game.
Compare Duchene and Ryan Tannehill.
You're right.
Different roles.
Ryan Tannehill is more movable than Matt Duchene. I can get rid of Ryan Tannehill after next year. I can't get rid of Matt Duchene. He's on my team.
Well, you said that that Crispy and I thought that the Predators are better off without Matt Duchene. That's not what I said. I said this team very much so is better when Matt Duchene is healthy. This team very much so is better when Matt Duchene can play. But saying that you should play Matt Duchene because he has a big contract, because you're not getting rid of him, that doesn't really make any sense. Just because the guy's here to stay doesn't mean that he has to play every single second.
No, it doesn't mean he has to play every single second. It means you can't just bench him every time you get mad at him. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I will say this for Hines. I think it was very smart of John Hines not to say that he benched him yesterday and not to make it more than what it may just be, because you can't afford a rift with him. You cannot afford a rift with him. And if you don't like it, don't sign him to the contract that you shouldn't have signed him to. But that ship has sailed. And it's not Hines' fault. But when Hines took the job, the premise was get the guys who weren't playing well, the high-paid guys, to start playing well. That's what David Poyle said. And when he's talking about the high-paid guys who aren't playing well, he's talking about Johansson and Duchene. And so maybe those guys are lost causes. I don't know. But I would just say this, man. I'd be very careful. I'd be very careful with those guys, because especially Duchene, you cannot afford a locker room issue. You cannot. And I've just, I've seen it enough. I mean, Carson Wentz, let's use him as an example. Carson Wentz literally just burned down the entire franchise in Philadelphia. The players didn't like him, pouted his way out, got the coach fired, then demanded he's got to go too. And now Philadelphia is out there with no cap space and Jalen Hurts at quarterback. And that's, you can't put yourself in that position. And Matt Duchene, as far as the contract and the lack of mobility with that contract, your hands are kind of tied. And again, do you think that it was a good idea? Do you think it was a good idea just for the Philadelphia Eagles last year? Do you think it was a good idea to bench Carson Wentz and play Jalen Hurts?
In terms of the attitude that and the repercussions that came from Carson Wentz, I don't think it was a good idea.
No. Not knowing what you know now. But do you think it was a good idea to help the Philadelphia Eagles win last year to make the switch from Wentz to Jalen Hurts?
I think they were doing what they needed to do to set up their future franchise quarterback for success. Yes, I would have done it.
Well, I don't think Jalen's their franchise quarterback.
You don't think so?
They've said he's not. They say he's not even the starter. I mean, if you guys are franchise quarterback, he's a... I think that...
Well, he's going to be the starter.
I think Jalen Hurts gave them a better chance to win last year, and they played Jalen Hurts. And it got Doug Peterson fired. And it ruined the relationship with Carson Wentz. And I'm just saying, you can't do that. You can't do that with Matt Duchene. You cannot do that with him. As much as you want to send the message, hey, only the guys who bring it every night are going to play. Only the guys who are going to... I deal in practicality here. And that contract... Hey, when you signed him to that contract, when you were that desperate to give him that contract, you gave him that power. And that's the power he has. And again, I know that we can sit here and say that Matt Duchene should just play harder. Like the benching should be like a punishment. And when you get punished, you should learn to act better. But I think in reality, we know that situations like that can lead to resentment. And I worry that, this isn't the first time John Hines has benched him. This is not the first time.
Don't turn the puck over. If you don't want to be benched, don't turn the puck over.
Okay, you would say the same thing to Carson Wentz. Did that keep him from holding resentment and tearing his things down on his way out?
No, but he was being a little bit dramatic.
But that's what these guys do. That's what players do. Now, I think Duchene's probably a little bit more mature. But, Ian, you remember how he got his way out of Colorado?
Mm-hmm.
So, and they said the second he left in Colorado, they started playing better and everything was better. And look at what they've been since he's left. Look, this is the bed that they've made with him, and they better be careful. I'm just saying they better be careful. I understand the idea, right? Again, it's like the punishment. If you don't do your homework and you punish your child because they didn't do their homework, and it's like, well, you're punished because you didn't do this. That's fine. But what if your kid turns you off for forever? Was it worth it to punish him for the homework because he's now turned you off for forever?
Well, I mean, I'm just sick and tired of athletes having this sense of entitlement and being a diva and saying, oh, well, okay, I performed badly and you're going to punish me for that. So now I'm going to be mad and I'm going to stomp my feet and throw a temper tantrum.
Wait, then you better decide who you give $56 million to before you do that.
That is true.
So that's the position they find themselves in. And sometimes you don't know about a guy like that. And I don't even know if Duchesne's like that, honestly. I'm just saying, as far as, I'm not saying Duchesne is going to take this benching and, say screw John Hines and turn into Kyle Turris. I'm not saying that. But I'm also not ruling it out. And I just think that we need to consider that in pro sports, that's how some of these guys act. Let's get to your calls on this next. 615-737-1025. Plus, we'll check in on the headlines with Caroline as we are live at the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation at the Grove in Arrington. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025. The Game. We are live from the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation at the Grove in Arrington. Caroline Fenton is here. Ian is here. And today was a good energy day, Now I'm fired up. I'm fired up at Crispy. I'm fired up at Caroline Fenton.
Fine, be mad.
I'm a little fired up at Ian. But I actually don't know whose side Ian's on this. If you're just joining us, Matt Duchene benched last night by John Hines in the third period. Crispy totally for it, saying, hey, this team can win without you giving your 100% effort. Happy about it. Good for John Hines. Caroline backs him. I just say be careful. Guy's got 5 years and 5 years, $40 million left. He's got a 7-team no trade starting in 23, so I'm not really worried about that. I'm just not sure you can get rid of him with 5 years and $40 million left on that contract with an $8 million cap hit and a stagnant cap given the pandemic. So you just don't want to do that. You just don't want to do that to a guy, that can, quite frankly, has more job security than you do. And we've seen it all the time in sports. Guys don't like their way. They want to get their way out, can tear a locker room apart. And even though I am not condemning Matt Duchene, let me say this. I am not pointing my finger at Matt Duchene and saying that he is a coach killer. I am not saying that he is a bad locker room guy. I am not saying that he doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt here. But there was a lot of discussion about when he was unhappy in Colorado and what that did to the team. And we all know how much better they played the second he left. So I am just putting that into evidence as we lay it all out. We have a bunch of phones on this, calls and text. You have a thought or you want to go to the phones?
To the phones.
Phones we go. 615-737-1025. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ellie is going to kick us off this hour. Has been waiting patiently. Go ahead, Ellie.
Yeah. The Predators let up 6 goals against the Columbus Blue Jackets when the goaltender was in. Matt Duchene and Ryan Ellis, because it directly and indirectly caused those goals. You cannot do that in the playoffs if you expect to win in the playoffs. Ryan Ellis scored a goal for the team, set up a screen for a goal to be done, and played no defense in another play. Duchene made a stupid play in the first period, and in the second period, with less than a minute, did not set up a screen for Saros. You cannot do it. In the third goal, Ryan Ellis could have easily cleared a puck. You cannot do it if you're going to win in the playoffs. And if you're not going to be part of the solution, then you shouldn't be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. You have no choice on Matt Duchene. You signed him. I get the idea of, hey, Matt Duchene's not going to, he's got to go. He shouldn't be here. You signed him. You chased him for 3 years. You signed him, and you have to deal with that. The Ryan Ellis thing. This is like when we were talking about the Titans in the outside linebacker position and how they have an injured Bud Dupree with a torn ACL on one side, and they've got Harold Landry, who proved last year that he could not play every snap. And they don't have any depth. And it's almost like the Titans don't understand. Or it's like Clowney when they signed him and everybody thought, oh, yeah, Clowney's good. And you watch the games and Clowney doesn't do anything. And it's like, this guy kind of freaking sucks. And it's like, no, Jared, the next gen stats say Clowney is good and the double team variant and, all those things I don't like. Remember why I don't like analytics? Clowney's why. I can't stand it. Ryan Ellis, man, nobody, except for me apparently, nobody points a finger at him at all. And all he does is what happened last night. Just sitting with his thumb, just sitting there while they circle around him and they score. And then everybody's like, oh, yeah, that was a tough one. Like, no. If that was Ryan Johansson, if that was Matt Duchene, if that was a guy who the fans don't love, and I don't even think the fans love Ryan Ellis that much. I think it's the team has sold everybody that Ryan Ellis is really, really good when Ryan Ellis is really, really not that good. But, you talk about a guy who gets no criticism. It's Ryan Ellis. And I cannot get over it. So not to go so far off the Duchene thing, I cannot get over the lack of criticism that Ryan Ellis receives. And it's almost like it starts with the team because they bench everybody else when they don't play well. They're going to bench Matt Duchene. He's got the most unmovable contract on the team. But they're not going to bench Ryan Ellis. And Ryan Ellis comes right back in. Put him right back out there on the ice. Oh, my goodness. Oh, Ryan Ellis drives me insane. And then we have Hal on the show, And Howell will come on and be like, oh, Ryan Ellis, he's so great. He's this, he's that, he's this, he's that, he's that. No, Yossi is this and that and this and that, and he's that. Oh, my goodness. Ellis, the Ellis stuff, man, jaw just grinds my gears. Oh, it grinds my gears.
You'd be nice to Hal.
Hal needs to start calling it like it is in that regard. Adam is up next here on Stillman Company. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Adam.
I got a couple things, man. So, number one, help me understand Rocco Grimaldi. I can't understand. All right, so if you had an NBA player that scored 50 points in a game, you would not put him on the bench for the rest of the year. If a running back had 200 yards, he would not go on the bench. Why does a 4-goal scorer go on the bench? He is better than Duchesne. I don't care what you say on that. And you should have known that Duchesne was that kind of player. Everything you were just naming and saying, I'm not saying he's this guy. Yes, he's absolutely that guy, man. There's a Uber video of him ripping his coach apart. You should have never signed a guy like that. He is a selfish. He's a selfish, and if he was a really good player, he could be selfish. But he's a selfish, not so good player.
So I can't go there on Duchesne. And I get it. I mean, the fans are always going to want to throw that out there on certain guys and say, he's a bad guy and Matt Duchesne wasn't the only player in the Uber driver who was trashing their coach. And let's not kid ourselves about all of us in our jobs. Like, I'm sure everybody trashes somebody they work with. I mean, so I'm not going to, to me, like, I'm not going to hold that against him. I'm not. The Grimaldi thing, to me, it's this with Grimaldi. He's not good enough. Like, I know he had a hat trick. A lot of people have had hat tricks. He's not the first guy to ever have it. He's just not good enough. And I mean, he's a nice player that can give you some energy and plays hard and plays the right way, and he does the right things. And I'm not going to lose my mind if Rocco Grimaldi is in the lineup, in a big game. Because what happens in the playoffs, and everybody knows this, is, you win a game or you lose a game, and then after you lose a game, you want to make a lineup change. You feel like you have to make a change in order to win the next game. And Rocco may be one of the first guys off the bench that gets back into the lineup when you lose a playoff game to try and change things up, like Scott Hartnell was a couple of years ago. But, I mean, Rocco's not good enough. Like, it's like when we were talking, and the Seattle beat writer for The Athletic did a mock draft of the expansion draft, and he took Rocco Grimaldi, and I was like, fine, whatever. The idea about Duchesne being selfish or Duchesne being a bad teammate or Duchesne being a bad guy, I cannot go there. And there are a couple of reasons of why I can't go there. Number one, I've interviewed Matt Duchesne. I wouldn't say we know each other well, just a hey kind of thing, whatever. I've never gotten the vibe that he's a bad guy. And not to say that my vibe means everything. I've always said that, you never know. And if it comes out tomorrow in the paper that Ian does something crazy, I'm going to be like, I had no idea. I've only worked with the guy every day for the last 5.5 years, but I had no idea. No offense, Ian. I'm just using that as an example. But I know a lot of people that are close with Matt Duchesne. I don't hear that. I haven't heard that rumble from the team at any point about Matt Duchesne, like I heard it about Kevin Fiala, like I heard it about Colin Wilson, like I heard it about Turris. Yeah, I haven't heard that about Duchesne. Yes, I remember the Colorado situation, very much so. But until I hear something like that and somebody I trust, I can't go there with you. And that's why I'm not going to do it. I'm not going there on Duchesne because I have not heard that myself, and I feel like my sourcing is pretty darn good. So I can't do that as far as, the guy's not playing well. You want to say he's a selfish guy. I don't have any evidence that proves that. What's in the text line?
Texter in the text line says, do you think Seattle would take Duchesne if we give them a first-rounder and Olivier? We'll have to give them a package for taking Duchesne. That's not worth it, in my opinion.
I mean, the only option for Matt Duchesne is to get him to play better. Like, that's the option. Like, I know that people think this is crazy. It's like, the idea of him playing better, that can't be a thing. We saw him play better last week than he's been playing so far. But that's it. That's your option. That is it. You're not trading away a first-round pick. This goes back to if you want to have the Poyle discussion, you can have the Poyle discussion, but clearly the Matt Duchesne signing was not a good signing But there is no answer to it right now other than he's got to start playing better. I mean, sometimes you have to say, hey, you've locked yourself in the box, and this is the box you're in, and that's the box you're in with him.
Donovan texted in and said, I think Coach Hines is doing a great job. Holding all accountable is good for the team. Don't play favorites. He's handled it well. I'm sure Duchesne will respond with a superior effort Saturday night.
You know, you hope so. I mean, that's the hope, right? Like, the idea is, hey, John Hines sat these guys on the bench, and John Hines is going to get the best effort out of these guys on Saturday. But I use the Carson Wentz example of you don't always do that. I mean, Laviolette scratched Turris like 8 times last year, and we got to hear all about it from his wife's podcast where she broke that down and about how he wasn't as upset the second time he got benched as he was the first time he got benched. And again, you know, the Laviolette Turris thing, that's a rabbit hole now. And I would just say that I feel personally like it's wishful thinking that Duchesne will automatically play super energized because he got benched.
I don't know. I think that you have 2 different responses to getting benched. Me personally, if my boss, if you came up to me and said, hey, I need you to step it up, we're not going to have you on the show today because you haven't performed very well, that would light a fire under my butt. And I would work my butt off to make sure that I earned that spot back that I previously lost. Or I could cause a fit and say, okay, you know, F you anyways. I don't want to be here. There's 2 different responses, and I agree with Donovan in saying that ideally he would have the former response that, hey, you know what, I didn't perform at the level that I was supposed to. I turned the puck over. I didn't play well, and I'm going to come out Saturday, and I'm going to get done what this team needs to get done because I want my team to be in the playoffs. Because you can pout all you want. You're not getting to the playoffs if you pout.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, I don't know Matt Duchesne well enough to know what exactly his response is going to be.
I guess we'll see.
And you know, I mean, there were a lot of people and I keep going back to Carson Wentz because it's on my mind, but there were a lot of people with the Eagles that were like, you know, hey, Carson Wentz, all these stories came out that Carson Wentz was a bad teammate. And the Eagles kept fighting back on those. Like, oh, these unnamed sources, what are they talking about? They don't know. And then another unnamed source would come out and say, the players like Foles more than they like Wentz. And it'd be like, unnamed sources. I don't trust any of this. That's all garbage. And then Carson Wentz got benched. And all of a sudden, once he got benched, the coach had to go. And then once the coach did go, he still didn't want to come back to the team. I mean, give me a break. Like, that confirms everything that had been reported with those unnamed sources. That confirms everything about Carson Wentz. I don't want that guy on my team. That's why I celebrated when the Indianapolis Colts traded for him, because I think there's a chance he acts the same way. But and I can't tell you how Matt Duchesne will react because I don't know Matt Duchesne well enough. But I'm not going to say that he's going to act the bad way. I'm not going to say – I think Hines handled it well. Clearly, this is a behind closed doors thing because Hines brushed it off both times, both after the game when he was asked about it and with Robbie and Rexroad this morning when he was asked about it. He brushed it off, and I think that was probably a good play on his part. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll hit the headlines with Caroline coming up next. Stillman Company is live from the Simmons Bank Open for the Stedeker Foundation right here in Arrington. 615-737-1025 is our phone number here on Stillman and Company. Let me tell the fine folks out there that ESPN 1025 The Game and T-Mobile have partnered to give you a chance to experience a Nashville SC game this season. Tune in every Monday to Darren, Donick, and Chase for the keyword to text in to win. Good luck from ESPN 1025 The Game and from T-Mobile. Stillman and Company, it's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. I don't know if this is public news or not. Like, I don't have a press release saying it, which would be something that you would normally want, like a press release to announce something like this. But, I mean, if you say it to season ticket holders, you're saying it to everybody, right?
I guess so.
Okay.
So is it a Preds release?
It is. For season ticket holders, at least. I don't know. Again, I'm a season ticket holder, and I got the email, but I didn't get the press release email.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the Predators,
go for it.
the Predators in the season ticket holder email say that they're excited to announce that they're going to increase seating capacity at Bridgestone Arena for the 2021 Stanley Cup playoffs. So apparently that's because a lot of people followed the rules. And I know this. I'm sure that if they announce it, the governor will probably take a victory lap on that. It had nothing to do from what I have been told, that it's more about the league and the league being satisfied with the way the Predators have handled things. So that's worth noting. And imagine this. Apparently, in order to deal with all of the precautions, there are federal precautions, there are state precautions, there are local health board precautions, there are NHL precautions. I mean, it is a lot of hurdles in order for them to clear that. But apparently, they're going to have more seating for the playoffs. So there's
Smashville.
Time for headlines with Caroline.
We're spanning the sports world. It's Headlines with Caroline on Stillman Company, right here on Nashville's best sports talk,
ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
So there was just the sweetest, cutest little story on Twitter last weekend, and it kind of came back up again last night. So there was a guy that tweeted at the Arizona Diamondbacks that said that his roommate was on a date at the Diamondbacks game, and the Diamondbacks were going back and forth with him, like, what is he wearing? Where is he sitting? We want to find him. So they went back and forth on Twitter, and the Diamondbacks were saying, okay, it's looking good. They're laughing. And so this kind of blew up and got a ton of traction on Twitter. And the guy was like, yeah, no, I think it went well, and I think we're going to have a third date. Their third date was at an Arizona Coyotes game last night. They were wearing matching Coyotes jerseys, which I don't think that they had originally. I think the Coyotes may have set that up. But anyways, it's been very, very fun to follow this cute little love story, this cute little Arizona sports love story on Twitter.
Yeah, I think the Atlanta Hawks had a Tinder night, like when Tinder first came out, and two people met, the Atlanta Hawks had a Tinder night, and two people met, and they ended up getting married. So the Atlanta Hawks ended up paying for them to have the reception at Phillips Arena where they met. And I think the Hawks kind of footed the bill because they met at the Tinder night that the Atlanta Hawks had. So, all for this. I will say this, in my past life, I was very much a serial Nashville sports dater. So Titans games, Preds games, Sounds games. Let me say this. There is not a single guys out there. The Nashville Sounds game is the best bargain for your dollar first date that you can go on because the stadium's nice, the atmosphere's fun, it's nice, it's outside, it's warm weather, you got the bandbox, you got the berm, the Sounds game. I'm not here to do a commercial for the Sounds, but I'm just saying, So as somebody who has been through that in their life, I would say that I think sporting events, especially if you're me, like if you're on a first date to a sporting event, like if you're not going to be able to do the sporting event, like if you're like, the sport's not really my thing, it's probably not going to work out.
Exactly, and I think that's the perfect first date because if you don't have anything to talk about, you have an entire game going on in front of you that you can talk about. And I'm just a big ballpark food fan.
Mm-hmm.
Hot dogs, nachos, pretzels. Cannot watch a baseball game without peanuts. So I think it's a good first date. You got something to talk about, especially if it's nice outside, and it's a cheap date. I mean, you can get bargain tickets and a hot dog, and I'm totally fine. I'm totally set.
I don't know if you got, I don't know if you remember this, or I don't know if I told you this, but at one point in time, I was going out, so we gone on a couple dates, and we were going out on a third date, or we had talked about going out on a third date, and while I'm on the air, she texts me and she's like, hey, I think you're a great guy, but I just don't, see us clicking. I just don't think it's going to work.
On the air?
Well, she didn't call into the show and say that,
Well,
but she texted
that
my
would
phone
be
while
so
I was
bad,
on the air.
But still.
I'm pretty sure Ian would remember that if that had happened while it was, if she had called in. But so she says this, and I had said, you want to go to the Sounds game that night? And we ended up going to this, and I was like, just go to the game. So we ended up going to the Sounds game, and she had a great time, and we were together for a little bit longer than that. So, again, not here to sit here and do an infomercial for why you should go to the Sounds games on dates, but I'm just saying. What's next?
Take notes, friends. So Aaron Rodgers, former Green Bay fullback John Kuhn, he's a very, very close friend of Aaron Rodgers. He spoke with CBS Sports just to kind of give a little bit of context in regards to the situation. He said he didn't want to divulge too much information, but he said that Aaron Rodgers is conflicted because this man loves to play the game of football and this man loves to be a Green Bay Packer. I don't know if I necessarily agree with all of that, but he said he's watched friends leave. He watched Brett Favre's career towards the end. He watched all these things play out in front of his eyes, and he's taken notes throughout his career. He's seen some situations that didn't feel were done or finished the way that they could or should have. He said, I think it's still somewhere around 70 to 75% that Aaron Rodgers is the starting quarterback for the Packers this year. Now, all of this that his good close friend is saying contradicts, I feel like, everything that I've heard from Aaron Rodgers himself, all these stories coming out about Aaron Rodgers, that he said, I will not be in Green Bay next year. He said, I'm sick of this organization. He compared the GM of the Packers to Jerry Krause, who is perceived as a villain in terms of a GM of a professional sports team.
Sure.
So I just don't really know who to believe. I feel like there's been so much back and forth about, oh, no, Aaron will be a Packer. Oh, no, just kidding. No, he won't.
So I think the thing to deal with when it comes to the Aaron Rodgers situation is we have to know the certainties here. There's a lot of unknowns about Aaron and the Packers. And
a lot of rumors and gossip.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's total gossip. But Aaron likes that, I think.
I think he does.
So here's what I know. I know Aaron this idea Aaron loves being a Packer. Aaron loves Aaron loves Aaron, okay? Forget about anything else. Aaron loves Aaron, and I think we know that. It's been well established. The second thing is I don't think Aaron's given $40 million back, and I think that's how much, if he were to retire, that's how much money Aaron would have to give back to the Packers.
If not more. I
So
think maybe around 44.
I don't think he's given $40 million back. Now, the Jeopardy thing is intriguing because Jeopardy pays a lot of money. I mean, Jeopardy is one of the most watched television shows in America, and I can see this. You know how we have, coaches buyouts? Mm-hmm. Where a coach, it'll cost $10 million for Alabama to hire Wichita State's coach, and every time the Power 5 school is like, no problem, we'll hire a coach. No problem, we got it. Jeopardy makes so much freaking money, and I think his ratings were the highest. I wonder if that's the way out for Aaron, is if Jeopardy is willing to pay the money back.
I think Jeopardy would pay $40 million to get Aaron Rodgers.
Do you know how much money Jeopardy makes?
I don't, actually.
Like
Not
Judge
too
Judy,
well-versed on
Judge Judy
finances.
makes less money than Jeopardy, and Judge Judy owns that corporation that has the Judge Judy show. Judge Judy makes $58 million a year.
So they're going to spend, I would say, okay, let's say half of their yearly income just to get Aaron Rodgers to come? Just to pay out his contract?
Would you do it?
His salary?
Would you do it if you were getting the next Alex Trebek? So if Aaron, and I didn't watch Jeopardy when Aaron was on, and honestly, I'm not much of a Jeopardy guy, but if Aaron is so good at Jeopardy, I saw the ratings went down with Anderson Cooper, and I think the highest ratings have been Aaron's ratings. And with Aaron hosting Jeopardy, you legitimately have a superstar hosting that show. If Aaron, let's just say Aaron is the next Alex Trebek, which is a big step for me to say, considering that I've never actually watched him do it. If Aaron's the next Alex Trebek, would you not pay, let's say Jeopardy makes $60, $70 million a year. Would you not pay $44 million in order to get the next Alex Trebek?
I guess I would.
So
I guess if you're guaranteeing ratings, but I guess this kind of goes back to our Titans and Aaron Rodgers conversation yesterday. Are you willing to give up Ryan Tannehill and 2 first-round picks to get Aaron Rodgers, who may or may not be the next Super Bowl champion for the Tennessee Titans?
There's a shelf life on
doing
Aaron
the same thing, right? And there's no shelf life on Jeopardy, so that's why I'm saying if I was Jeopardy, you're having him for the rest of his life, I guess. So yes, I would be willing to make that investment, which is why I would not be willing to make that investment for the Titans. You're giving up too much to have too little.
So that's the wild card here.
Right.
That's the wild card, because if Jeopardy won't pay it, then I think Aaron has to go back to Green Bay, because Green Bay gave him too much money up front. He's not giving any money back. So that's the thing to watch here on the Aaron Rodgers saga. The other thing is, is Green Bay just better off just cutting bait? I mean, that's the other part.
There's so much drama around it. And if he does come back to Green Bay next year, he's already said he doesn't want to be there. So I don't know if I necessarily want my starting quarterback to be someone who's already said, look, I don't want to be a part of this organization anymore.
We just spent 30 minutes talking about Matt Duchene. And we spent 30 minutes talking about, is he going to feel slighted by being benched by the coach? I think Aaron is a perfect example of the idea of like, dude, you know what? You're a professional athlete. You need to give it your all. You got benched. Go out. Aaron.
I think Aaron Rodgers is too far gone with the Packers. This has just been going on for way too long. The Matt Duchene thing, I think this Aaron Rodgers situation is the Matt Duchene situation, but like times a million.
Sure. Times 44.
Okay.
44 million.
Yeah, exactly. 44 million.
What's next?
The Los Angeles Angels are releasing future Hall of Famer Albert
I saw
Pujols
that
today. Yes, my childhood hero, Albert Pujols. I absolutely loved him. I had his Dominican Republic jersey. I had his Cardinals jersey. Absolutely loved him as a kid. Can we go ahead and assume that Albert Pujols is going to retire? He's 41 years old. He's finished out his 10-year, $253 million contract, which that baseball money just hits different. Do we think he's going to retire?
Yeah, he's probably going to retire.
Yeah.
Good teams. The well-run organizations in sports, they don't give out those kind of contracts to guys when they know there's going to be that huge decline. Bill Belichick cut you a year early, doesn't want to have you for a year later. The Jets, they would go pay Peyton Manning right now if Peyton said, hey, I'd like to come out and play football. That's just good organizations do certain things. Bad organizations do other things. Most organizations are in between. I think the St. Louis Cardinals read the writing on the wall and said, hey, he's our entire franchise, and he's not worth it. And
at that point, they saw, okay, you want 10 years, you're going to be too old by then, and we're not going to give you what you want.
And the Angels have something that is certainly fleeting in that sport, which is an owner who just wants to spin to win. The Mets have one now. Sometimes these teams are like, you know what, screw it. Spend the money to win. They did it with Pujols. They didn't win. I will say this. I had a buddy who I went to college with, played for the Angels, said that it was literally surreal getting on the plane, and being like, that's Albert Pujols. He's in the big leagues. I'm walking around like, yo, that's Albert Pujols. And he said that, boy, Albert was a great teammate, took care of a lot of guys. And so, but a Hall of Fame career, was unbelievable. I think he was an 11th round pick. And as much as we talk about Brady, we don't talk about Pujols like that. But yeah, no, it's time to hang it up. Those are headlines with Caroline. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We, again, are live at the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation out here in Arrington at the Grove. And I do have the feeling right now that there are a lot of these people with, really big credentials that are kind of sitting out here looking around, walkie-talkies. I feel like they may be getting ready to call play. I think they may be a little worried about the weather situation that we perhaps may find ourselves in.
I'm getting a few texts that are saying this is going to be bad. So,
bad?
Like somebody said that this is going to be an S storm.
If only somebody had texted our group chat today and said, what about this whole weather situation we're looking at? If only somebody could have, that would have been.
All right. Slow your roll
I'm just
over there.
saying.
We all have the weather app.
Clearly, you guys weren't using it in the text chain. Guess what season it is? Moving season. If you're looking to move, give my friends at TriStar Moving a call. At TriStar Moving, you'll get 5-star service throughout the entire process. Everything will be taken care of, from covering floors, banisters, railings, the front door thresholds. They'll even wrap and protect all of your furniture and put all of your TVs in protective boxes. They took great care of all of my things during my move, and they made it as stress-free as possible. They'll do the same for you. They have a brand new state-of-the-art storage facility in Mount Juliet. Their owners, Garrett and Robert, are true Nashvillians, and they care about helping this community any way they can. If you're looking to move, give my friends at TriStar Moving a call. 615-640-1219. Their website is nashvillemoving.org/radio. They'll give you 5% off your entire move. TriStar Moving, nashvillemoving.org/radio. Tell them Jared Stillman sent you, my official movers. Stillman Company. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHoney.com. I see a text into the text line saying that in Jackson they got slammed by the storms. Didn't last long, but the winds were heavy.
Cute.
Apparently a nasty storm. I'm not one of these guys who does weather talk on the radio, but I did hear that the horn.
What was it? One more time? Yes, that one.
I did hear that, and I do feel like it's all going down right behind me right now, where all the guys with credentials are like, let's mark the official time at 5:37 to say what time, 1 hour or whatever. And so, I don't know. It was a beautiful day out here, and now it is no longer, but that's okay. Boy, what a good show today. I mean, TD today, and Terry Crispy
Terry
getting
was
after
spicy.
it today. Boy, Crispy was.
He's spicy.
Crispy was on one today coming at me. But it is time now for Carolines.
Get in on the action. Put the money on the mahogany. What's on tap on the sports books? It's time to break it all down with Carolines. Here on Stillman Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
So I made an executive decision on Carolines.
Okay.
Starting next week, we will do each month as a best of 3.
Okay.
And we will keep track of this, and I'm putting you in charge of that, so you cannot cheat it.
Okay.
But we will do a best of 3.
Cheat it.
And every month we'll have a winner. In the best of 3, there has to be a challenge. So we have to decide what the challenge should be. But there will be a Carolines challenge.
Interesting.
And we will see how that goes. And I literally just decided that 5 minutes ago.
Perfect. I love it. I'm up for the challenge. And while we're talking about it, I would just like to point out that a couple days ago, you were like, oh, don't get carried away with the pitching with the Brewers and the Phillies. You were rocking with the Brewers, and the Phillies did win.
I did. Not only did the Phillies win, they also turned in the wrong lineup card. And
Did
a guy that was supposed to be active was not active for that game and could not pitch.
Ooh, and they still won. So let it be known, Jared Stillman knows nothing about baseball.
Joe Girardi's incompetent, but not Caroline Fenton.
Nope,
What's out
not
there?
me,
What
on my watch.
What do we have
Absolutely not.
today?
Today we've got some hockey. Chicago travels to Carolina, and I'm rocking with the Hurricanes -1.5. I mean, the Blackhawks season is over. The Hurricanes are 7-0-3 in their last 10, and they've won 5 in a row, with 4 of those wins by more than 1 goal. They've won 20 and lost 3 on home ice this season. I mean, if you bet against the Hurricanes, you want to lose money.
The Carolina Hurricanes are the best team in hockey right now, and I would argue this. You know, if they were to play, say the Predators were to play Tampa Bay in the first round of the playoffs, we would look at that and we would say, hey, that's the defending Cup champions, and they have done this, and they have done that. And we did this in 2017 when they played Chicago, and it was like, yo, they've won 3 cups. Like, they've won 3 cups. And, look, Carolina is every bit the part of a contender. And I don't want to compare them to the Buffalo Bills last year because we know how the Bills season ended. But it was basically from October until that AFC Championship game, you couldn't stop the Bills. And you looked at Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, and you were like, yo, this team is legit. And that's how I feel about the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, they are freaking good.
And they're playing for a President's Trophy. You know, people at the end of the season like to say, okay, no, your spot in the playoffs is secured. You know, you can kind of like get off the gas a little bit.
But here's where it's different than normal years, is that they will reseed once they get to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you win the President's Trophy this year, the President's Trophy is a big deal because if you win it and you get to that Final Four, one of these teams is going to pull it out of their rear end. You know, like everything that everybody hopes the Predators do, where it's like, hey, anything can happen in the playoffs, baby. I think that one of these teams in one of these divisions is going to do it. You're going to get that team. So if the Islanders pull it out of their rear end and come out of the East, and then you've got the President's Trophy, you get the lowest seeded team. And I think that is a big deal for those. I don't know if they're going to call them conference finals or whatever the hell they're going to call them. But once you get to that Final Four, they're going to reseed, and I think that's a big deal. I'm going to take Carolina, by the way, money line right here.
Money line?
Money line, yeah.
I'm taking the -1.5. They're going to win. They're going to win. Bruins and Rangers tonight. I mean, whatever is going on in New York, Rangers, not Islanders, it's a dumpster fire. They fired their president and their GM yesterday. I mean, we saw what happened with the Caps and the Rangers. They're just kind of off their rockers.
Got fined $250,000.
Got fined $250,000. They're not making the playoffs. I'm taking the Bruins money line. The Bruins are 4-2 in 6 meetings with the Rangers this season. Bruins are 9-3 in their last 12. They have your favorite Taylor Hall. I know how much you love him. And they're also in third place in the East Division. If they're within reach of climbing in the second, they get home ice in the playoffs. So they are playing for something. The Rangers are just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I'm taking the Bruins money line. You can take the Bruins -1.5 plus 125, but I'm just going to take the safe bet.
Okay, you got to do the Vegas thing from now on because you're picking games that are too easy to pick one way or another. I'm going to take the Bruins too. But it's got to be like those 50-50 games so I can at least have a chance at picking the other side. I mean, this right here,
you can take the Rangers.
The Chicago Blackhawks and the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm
just trying to make the people some money.
We're always going to pick the same side in that one.
Last time I gave you a 50-50, you lost. So I'm just looking out for you.
No,
I'm doing what's in your best interest.
You're giving you the best chance to win here by making it controversial. Also giving her the worst chance because I'm pretty good at this stuff. But I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take the Bruins here. The Bruins are playing for something. I know that they're in the playoffs, but again, that's seeding. Who knows? The Rangers, I mean, just, emotionally, I feel like the Rangers have kind of been through the gauntlet here. So I think they're kind of, I don't want to say they're over it, but, I mean, look, when you're done at this point in the year, you're kind of over it.
Right. It's looking kind of scary.
Oh, it's got dark in a hurry around here.
Yeah.
It got dark in a hurry. But anywho, that's not I am not a weatherman. I am not Leland Statham. Somebody call Leland and ask Leland what we're doing. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to get in, I guess you can here on Stillman and Company. Coming up next, though, we'll have the worst take of the day, and we will try, excuse me, we will try to not get blown away. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. I did notice on Caroline Fenton's Instagram yesterday that somebody asked her if Jared was cool in real life.
And I responded, he's the best.
He did. Now, somebody else named Caroline commented and said that it was debatable, and I have now decided who's going to get my world's best Caroline coffee mug.
And she does. She raises a valid point. I mean, I appreciate her skepticism.
Now, no Caroline may get the world's best Caroline coffee mug.
She keeps you in check. There's got to be one Caroline. Whenever it's not 2 to 6, another Caroline's got to keep you in check.
Yeah, there's something about that. So I'd say right now, I mean, I've never seen anything like this. And I've seen storms before. I've never watched the storm clouds gather like it has happened to us here at Arrington. Now, I will say this again: we are out at the Simmons Bank Open for the Snedeker Foundation, and again, one of us was proactive enough this morning to text into the text chain about the weather.
Okay, I just checked the weather for myself, and I'm the one who brought a jacket because I thought it was going to be a little bit chilly. And the other one is over here complaining about how they're going to have to walk back to their car with no jacket.
Oh, I'm going inside. I'm riding it out. I'm going inside. I'm waiting for the storm to end, and then I'm going outside. I'm going inside. I'm sure they'll have some food in there. I'm going inside, then come outside. Also, one of us was proactive enough to look at Darren Donick and Chase hosting the radio show outside the overhang underneath and said, hey, let's move it under. So I'm just saying.
Well, one of us was busy setting up streams and making you look good on your Zoom. I can't do everything. I'm not Superwoman.
First of all, this face looks good on the Zoom because this face looks good on the Zoom. But
no.
it is time now for our worst take of the day.
The worst take on today's show, as presented by Caroline Fenton.
I think that one just won it. But I have to call out our friend Caleb. Caleb, thank you so much for listening and watching. We appreciate you so much. But he texted in and said that Duchesne is the highest skilled player on the Predators.
I'm not going to totally rule that out.
Roman Josi, Eli Tolvanen, UC Saros.
UC Saros is a goalie. So
I know, but if you're talking about the most skilled player.
But nobody says that a goalie is skilled.
Well, he's skilled at his position.
Yeah, but nobody's referring to skilled as far as goalie is concerned. Dude, it looks like a Skittles commercial in front of us without the Skittles coming out of the clouds. What does
that mean?
Anywho, I guess you're too young for that. But I would say this, again, in terms of just pure skill. Philip Forsberg went to an All-Star game, I think, in 2015. Duchesne went to one in 2016. Johansson, I think, was the All-Star game MVP in 2014, those guys are kind of all there. I think we can get rid of all the other guys, right? Like the Yarncroaks and the Arvidssons and the Hallas and those guys certainly don't. Yeah, those guys certainly don't. I mean, Tanner
They're wonderful, but I'm not going to call them the highest skilled player on the team.
I think that Matt Duchesne, in terms of pure talent, is a lot closer to that than you think.
He's closer to that than the Hallas and the Trennans and the Yarncroaks.
I mean, I don't think there's as big of a gap. Now, I'm going to say Yossi's probably the most skilled player. Now, he's not a forward, and when most people talk about skill, they usually think about the forward
I would lean
position.
Forsberg, personally.
I think I probably would too, but
Duchesne, you're right. He might be the most one of the more dynamic and electric players on the team when he has some space.
I think that's what probably bothers all of us the most about all of this is the fact that we know in our hearts that he doesn't stink. And with Ryan Johansson, there's been a big question about, did he get the money? And once he got the money, was that it? And then he was good to go. And, I think a lot of people were voting yes on that. I wasn't, but I certainly wasn't far away. With Duchesne, I think about, I don't think Duchesne I think Duchesne puts too much pressure on himself, if I had to be completely honest with you. I
can't tell if you like Duchesne or not.
Well, I mean, I feel like I just call it like it is, and Duchesne, has completely underperformed. I mean, what he's done has been an unmitigated disaster.
So would you not bench him if he's underperforming?
I can't bench him. That goes back to, the whole argument that we had on the show for forever was once the Titans traded for Ryan Tannehill, the discussion about Mariota and Tannehill was at some level real. And I remember, that day trying to stir it up because John Robinson had a press conference and said, I talked to Ryan, I talked to Marcus. Marcus is the starter, Ryan is the backup. And, radio host tried to say, well, do you think Tannehill could be the guy? Do you think Tannehill could? And that was shot down by my co-host at the time very, very quickly. And, then there was always some talk in training camp about Tannehill trying to win the job over Mariota. Tannehill was the one that had to come out and say, no, there's no competition. I'm the backup to kind of stop it. But the one thing that we were constantly told was if you make that move, if at any point you make the move to Tannehill, you're done with Mariota. And there's no going back. And I go to this with Duchesne of there's more of a gray area here. He will play Saturday night. He will play. How does he feel personally about it? I don't know. But I would not have run the risk given kind of the way that he is so entrenched into the roster. And I just look at it like if I'm the coach or I'm the Predators, I can't say, well, they're just not playing well. I have to get those two guys, him and Johansson, I have to get them to play well. Because there's no way I'm beating Carolina if those guys don't play well. There's no way I'm beating Tampa Bay if those guys don't play well. My team was constructed for those guys to play well. Now, whether or not you want to get mad about the fact that they chased after Matt Duchene for all those years and they've gotten nothing in return because of it, that I think is a totally valid argument you can have. But that's different than whether or not you would have benched him. So, no, I would not have benched him last night. I would argue that Matt Duchene is there's a big story. It's more than just playing hard tonight for tonight's game when it comes to a player that's got that kind of baggage. By the way, celebrate Mom this Mother's Day with a gift of a 1.5-hour picnic-themed style photo shoot with Mackenzie Lee Photography at Centennial Park. Picnic setup, sips, and snacks will be included. Not only will you enjoy a fun, beautiful park picnic with your family, but you'll also receive 60-plus digital photos to remember it. Go to thegamenashville.com contest page and enter today. Caroline?
That's cute.
That's going to do it for us. We're back tomorrow for a Fireball Hot Take Friday at 2 o'clock. ESPN Radio, Spain and Fitz. Coming up next, it's Stillman Company. We'll see you